Welcome to another edition of the Hitting the Books show. Class is in session. Almost forgot that. College football hitting the books. Ian Cameron with you. My line mate, I guess you could say, to steal a hockey term, Connor Mack, unfortunately dealing with some power outage issues at his palatial estates right now in Las Vegas. He is expecting the power to be restored at his home in the next 20 to 30 minutes. He will join the show in progress at some point, and we'll definitely get through the games, a good stretch of the games before he joins us, and we'll definitely run through those games again and get his thoughts. But we wanted to get the show going and get it rolling here. And like I said, C-Mac will be here momentarily. It's week 5 in the college football season. It was a very fun, entertaining week 4. It was a profitable week 4. And in spite of some tough beats I had, it was a profitable week 4, which I'll take. But my gosh, the ones that stand out are Georgia Tech and the over, both losing against Louisville. That's heartbreaking. I felt we had the right side with both of those bets, and Georgia Tech struggling to finish drives. They have a blocked field goal. They can't score, trying to get in the back door at the end. That was a frustrating one. And then East Carolina late in the night stayed up 1 a.m. just to see a team up 17-0 not be able to cover as +8 underdogs in that game. That was frustrating as well. Mike Houston, by the way, the clock is ticking on that guy. His teams don't know how to win. His teams do not know how to finish games. And that is becoming a bit of a problem right now for East Carolina. And a terrible second half. They had no answers for Liberty. So that was a bad loss for them. Bad second half again from them in that game. How about James Madison putting 70 on the board against North Carolina? 70, and they had 50. Over 50 points at halftime against North Carolina. Just an absolutely disgraceful performance from the North Carolina Tar Heels. They always seem to have one of those games every year, North Carolina. It never fails, where they just have this embarrassing game, especially from their wretched defense. And their defense was supposed to be better this year, and they actually had played well up until that game against James Madison on Saturday, but that was hideous. That was embarrassing for North Carolina to give up 70 points to JMU. What would they have given up to JMU had they played James Madison last year when they had Jordan McLeod and they had an even better team and a better roster than what we saw? But crazy stuff there. Ross Pitts in the chat mentioning BYU. That was insane. I don't know if I've seen a end of the first half, start of the second half where it's like an avalanche and a snowball rolling downhill and Kansas State could not stop it. It was just incredible that BYU turns an early deficit into, 38-6 then at one point, and just blows the game wide open. And it just happened like that. It was just one crazy big play after another for BYU there to take down Kansas State. As far as some of the marquee games we saw, obviously last weekend, Michigan, huge win for them against USC. Tennessee is the real deal, folks. I mean, they are just outstanding on both sides of the ball. They're dominant in the trenches. Their O-line, their D-line is outstanding. The one area of concern still with them is their secondary, but so far they've held up okay. I want to see when they play a really good quarterback and a really good passing attack, how Tennessee fares in that type of situation. That's going to be interesting to monitor, but I think when it's all said and done, that's a Tennessee team that you could quibble that the secondary is not great. But really, other than that, it is a Tennessee team that's about as complete as it gets. A great road win for them in Oklahoma against the Sooners. I also have to bring up that crazy Friday night game on the West Coast there in the late night hours with San Jose State and Washington State. That was about as crazy, as batshit nuts a college football game as you will ever see. Unbelievable drama, excitement, points galore. It went back and forth all night. Hell of an effort by San Jose State, even in defeat. Washington State finds a way. I mean, they were definitely not at their best. We were worried about them in that spot, obviously, coming off the Apple Cup victory. That was a dubious spot to be laying, double digits like that with Washington State. And but they found a way to pull out the straight-up win in double overtime. Just an absolutely crazy game. Unbelievable in the first overtime. Both teams threw interceptions. I mean, that's that Washington State won that game still in spite of the unbelievably horrific mistake and mental blunder that John Mateer, the quarterback, made in overtime to throw the ball when they were already in field goal range. San Jose State threw an interception on their first overtime possession. All Washington State needs is a field goal, and he throws an interception. Crazy. And we have to go to a second overtime, but they still find a way, this Washington State team, to win that game in spite of the mistake that Mateer made. Crazy stuff. And what a wild game. That game was 4.5 hours long as far as real time. It started at 10 p.m. Eastern time, and it finished like just after 2:30 a.m. Eastern time on Friday night. Crazy stuff. But that's the past. Profitable week. It was just a small profit, but profit is profit. I'll take it. That was then, though. This is now. Let's talk week 5. Let's get into it. And we will begin with Thursday night, where we have just one standalone game Thursday night. It is the Army Black Knights taking on the Temple Owls. And this is an AAC conference game because Army is now a member of the AAC. So this is a conference game for them, taking on the Temple Owls. We've got Army 13.5-point road favorites, 45.5 being the total here in this game. This Army team, man, is really good. Really good football team. Jeff Monken doing a nice job as the head coach. This is as good an Army team as I've seen in the trenches to begin a football season. O-line has been blowing people off the line of scrimmage. The D-line has been getting after it. They've been stopping the run. They've been absolutely phenomenal, really, along the offensive line and the defensive line, Army. I've been so impressed with what we've seen from them so far this season. You look at the team numbers. They're only giving up 85 rushing yards per game. They're shutting down the run. They're trying, and the passing, even the passing numbers are pretty good because 48th in the country, 186 passing yards allowed per game. Because the service academies, for as long as I've been alive, they've never been great in the secondary. Pass defense has always been a bit of an issue for teams like Army, teams like Navy, teams like Air Force. But this Army defense, man, I am just extremely impressed with them so far this season. I love the quarterback and the way he's playing, Bryson Daly. Not only, command of this triple option offense, but knows when to pitch it, knows when to hand it off, knows when to run himself. He is a heck of a running quarterback, and I didn't expect to see him run the football like this the way he is, but he's been phenomenal. In the destruction against Rice, and I laid the points with Army in that game, and it was about as easy a winner as you'll find. 37-14, they destroy Rice. Bryson Daly had 145 rushing yards, 3 rushing touchdowns as well. Kanye Udo, Dwayne Coleman also chipping in as far as the run game is concerned. Just extremely impressive. And I think what makes this Army team even better, there's a threat of a passing game down the field from Bryson Daly. Now, again, they're very, very selective, very, very selective as opposed to when he decides to throw the football. But when he does throw the football, he's been very efficient. He's been very accurate. Again, he only had 9 pass attempts against Rice, but he completed 6 for 107 passing yards and 2 touchdowns. Overall on the season, 3 passing touchdowns for Daly. So again, you still have to fear the ability to throw the football, which Army does have, probably bet more than they've had the last couple of years with this triple option offense. What do you make of Temple? Temple team that is not very good. We know that, but they are coming off 2 straight games where they've covered the number and been competitive, and you've seen improvement. They got blown out by Oklahoma first game, 51-3. They lose 38-11 to Navy on the road. The last 2 games, now these were at home. Keep that in mind. And this one is too. And maybe the home field has, been a bit of a boost for Temple. But they've been better in the last 2 games. And one of the reasons they've been better is because of the quarterback play. Evan Simon has been the quarterback. The transfer from Rutgers has taken over as the starting quarterback here for Temple the last 2 weeks because the other quarterback for them who started the year against Oklahoma and Navy is currently injured, and that's Forrest Brock. He started the first couple games this season for the Temple Owls, but he's been dealing with a wrist injury. So they went to Evan Simon in the Coastal game. He played pretty well in that game overall, 17-25, 2 touchdowns. And then he started again against Utah State. I think at that point they made the decision too because he played pretty well. We were competitive for the first time this year. We'll put him back out there. We won't rush Forrest Brock back. Let's see how Evan Simon does against Utah State. Hey, he was great. Nothing else to say. I mean, he was excellent, actually. 5 touchdown passes, 271 passing yards, 17 of 27 throwing the football. So you have to, and 49 rushing yards, bit of a dual threat as well, Evan Simon at the quarterback spot. So you got to give him credit. That being said, Coastal, they just got destroyed by Virginia. Start to question how good they are. We start to look at Utah State. This is a team I'm not high on at all. And so, yeah, that was very impressive to win, not just win it outright as an underdog, 6.5-point dog, but win 45-29, win by 16 points. That's impressive. But Utah State's not a very good program or football team this year. Let's see how this one goes against Army. Put it this way. I ain't going against Army. Not a chance. This is a team that has won every game by 17 points or more this year. They beat Lehigh by 35. They beat Florida Atlantic on the road by 17. They beat Rice by 23 last weekend. So 3-0 to start the year, straight up and against the spread. They've destroyed the point spread. It hasn't even been close. It's been a rocking chair winner. If you've taken Army each of the first 3 games, they've won every game by at least 17 points. There's no, it's Army or pass for this better. Period. If I'm betting this game, it's Army laying the points now, and I understand why it's moved a little bit, 11 up to 13.5. I know Evan Simon's given Temple a little pop in the offense, but I think Army's going to be able to do some damage. Here's a thing I'll throw at you too. I lean over 45.5. I get it. Army's going to be running a snail pace. Triple option teams do that. Service Academy teams are like that. They are not going to be in a hurry to snap the football. Possessions are going to be limited. I get that. But I think Army's going to be able to score at will against Temple's defense. I think they're going to, and I agree with what Trick or Treat's saying. The D line for Temple, I think, is going to get run over here in this game by this Army triple option. Keep in mind, they have a short week. Not only no bye week, which is always important when you're playing a triple option team, they have a short week too. You're going from Saturday to Thursday night to have to prepare for this triple option offense. Not easy for Temple. Not an easy week of prep for them. I still don't love the run defense, what we're seeing here from this Temple team. I think it's definitely going to be an opportunity here for Army to have success. Look at this Temple defense, 126th in the country, rushing yards per game, 221.8 rushing yards per game allowed by this Temple defense. That is not where you want to be weak when you're playing Army. I can tell you that right now. So I think Army can move the football and probably score on the majority of their possessions, even though there's not going to be as many possessions because they're going to play slow. But you got to upgrade the Temple offense, and I've upgraded the Temple. I've upgraded Temple as a team, but I've especially upgraded their offense with Evan Simon at quarterback. And now that he played so well against Utah State, even if Forrest Brock is healthy enough to come back from his wrist injury, I don't see them not starting Evan Simon again for a third straight game based on the way he's played at quarterback here for Temple. So I think Temple can do some offensive damage themselves here against Army because Army's defense has been awesome. But let's be honest, Rice has been terrible this season, especially offensively. They've struggled to put up points. Florida Atlantic's offense isn't very good. I'm not a big Cam Fancher fan, as I've said before. So I think Temple, especially playing at home, they can chip in some points. So total's low enough that I'm interested in the over a little bit here when it comes to this Army Temple game. And keep in mind with the Temple games so far, 54, 49, 48, 74 points. So all 4 Temple games so far this season have had at least 49 total points scored in the game. So I'm probably going to get there with over 45.5, even though you worry, of course, about how slow Army plays on offense. I still think we could get enough points to go over that total. And then from a side perspective, it's Army or nothing. I don't know if I'll lay the points, but I know I will not be on Temple in this game. That much I can tell you. All right, let's go to Friday night. 2 games on Friday night, including Virginia Tech taking on Miami. We've got the Hurricanes, 19-point home favorites, 55.5 the total in this game. I was kind of thinking all along last week South Florida would be in a spot to maybe challenge and step up and give Miami a scare. But tell you what, Miami, hats off to them. Just very, very impressive. There's no question about that. What they did last week in that game, offensively, they scored at will. Cam Ward, another phenomenal game, 404 passing yards, lit up the South Florida secondary. Jordan Lyle with over 100 rushing yards, a balanced offense. Isaiah Horton, Xavier Restrepo, in the passing attack. I mean, just very, very strong stuff from Miami's offense. And their defense, which I thought could struggle a bit with South Florida, they did give up 303 through the air to the South Florida offense, but there was no run game to speak of whatsoever. That is a really good Miami defensive line. You have to give them their props for completely taking away the run game of South Florida last week. And part of that, too, was South Florida got behind. They couldn't run the football. So the stats for the run defense were skewed a little bit by that. But nevertheless, Miami was absolutely phenomenal in that game. 50-15. They have a beat down over South Florida in that game. We'll see how they fare here against Virginia Tech. A Virginia Tech team coming off a 26-23 loss to Rutgers, a team that got off to a dreadful 16-7 deficit in the first half, rallied in the fourth quarter to tie the game, only to see Rutgers hit a game-winning field goal inside 2 minutes left to walk away with the 26-23 win. Not very impressive from the Virginia Tech defense. They could not stop Kyle Monangai and Samuel Brown, who teamed up for almost 150 yards rushing against Virginia Tech last week. Quarterback I'm not the biggest fan of, but you have to give him credit. He played well on the road in a tough place against a solid team. And Ethan Kaliakmanis and Virginia Tech struggled there defensively. Pass defense, run defense, both of those areas got chewed up a little bit in that game. And we can continue to see inconsistency from Kyron Drones. I'll be honest, I'm disappointed the way he's played so far. I thought he would take a step. He's the one that got Virginia Tech going last year after a sluggish start, and they made the quarterback change. He's just not been accurate enough with the ball. He's only completing 59.8% of his passes this year. 4 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. So the decision-making's been dubious at times. The good news is Tutton, the running back, 122 rushing yards. He's been solid. They have had a good run game. And Drones does have the ability to run as well, dual threat. But he's got to simply get better throwing the football, more consistent, more accurate. And that's definitely been a little bit of an issue for him so far. Very, very reluctant to step in front of Miami again after doing so last week with South Florida. That much I can tell you. But at some point, Miami, I think, might have one of those games where, keep in mind, South Florida is probably the best team they've played so far. They played Ball State, Florida A&M, Florida. Virginia Tech's probably the next best team they've played. And the one thing you have to say about Virginia Tech is this is the point spread role we kind of like them in when they're getting big double-digit numbers like this. But boy, oh boy, I'm telling you what, I don't know if I've seen enough in the offense. People are seeing just how incredible this Miami team is. It's a Friday night game. You can't imagine Miami's going to be flat for this game. It's a Friday night ACC conference home game. You play at Cal and you have I believe do they have a bye week? No, they don't. They play at Cal next week. So it's not a huge look ahead here for Miami after this game. I don't think I want to go against Miami again. Not after last week, after seeing what they've done. Miami team total over maybe because, look, when Virginia Tech's given up 26 at home to Rutgers, that's concerning now when you got to face Miami. So I don't know if I'll bet the game. If you like Miami, I think the better look is probably the team total over at this point. You keep your defense out of you don't have to worry about what they do or what they do not do defensively, especially now because this number opened 16.5. It's now up to 18.5, 19. So you're not getting as good of a number right now with Miami. I would probably look more team total here in this game with the Miami Hurricanes. I've seen enough. I saw enough now after that South Florida game to say I'm not rushing to step in front of Miami again. So it's one of these games where, like I said, I'm not going to be involved in it from a point spread perspective, but I could see Miami hitting their team total over in that game on Friday night. All right, Washington and Rutgers. We've got Rutgers 2.5-point home favorites, 46 being the total here in this game. Yes, I'm still getting used to this being a Big Ten conference game, but here we are, Washington and Rutgers. Washington bouncing back after the disappointing Apple Cup loss to Washington State, 24-19. They bounce back and they take care of business against Northwestern, 20-5. I don't want to make too much of it. Now, they did play better on offense. I will say that. It was a pretty good game from Will Rogers, 20 for 28, 223 through the air, 2 touchdowns. The run game added 144 rushing yards as well. I still am a little bit worried for the running game for Washington. It hasn't been consistent. And 144 rushing yards on 39 attempts puts you at, what are we looking at there? Not a great yards per carry average. So, I still have concern about whether Washington's run game, is good enough. I mean, that's 3.6 yards per carry. That's not great. A lot of the damage they did against Northwestern's defense was through the air. You're going to have to show now as you go coast to coast to Piscataway on Friday night against Rutgers if you can hold up in the trenches. Because the one thing you can say about Greg Schiano's team is they are usually solid in the trenches. And this is a team that, makes it a little bit more difficult to establish the run against you. Now, this year has been a little bit different for Rutgers. The run defense numbers have not been great. So it's kind of, Rutgers' run defense, which hasn't been great, not as good as it's been at times in the past, or a Washington team that's had struggles to get the ground game going. And when you factor in that this is a Washington team with a quarterback that is more known for throwing the football all over the yard, well, Rutgers has been very good as far as their pass defense is concerned so far this season. That's been the strength of the Scarlet Knights defense. It's been against the pass. And that is obviously where this Washington offense and especially quarterback Will Rogers thrives. He's not really a mobile threat. He's a guy that wants to get the ball down the field in the passing game. Well, Rutgers has been pretty good in the secondary. So you wonder if the matchups will work here for Rutgers. We wanted to see Rutgers against a good team because there was not much you could take away from them pounding Howard 44-7 or beating Akron 49-17. But to go on the road, jump out to a big lead against Virginia Tech, and yes, they blew the lead in the fourth quarter. Yes, Virginia Tech came back to tie the game. The bottom line is Rutgers answered, faced the adversity when Virginia Tech mounted that comeback in the fourth quarter to get the game-winning field goal and end up winning 26-23. That's showing that response to adversity, taking a punch and then punching back. That's a positive for Greg Schiano's team. You were up big, you let the lead slip away, but you punched back. You didn't let the game slip through your fingers. You responded. You got into field goal position late in the game to win against Virginia Tech on the road last week, and you did it. So congrats to them. And there was nothing fluky or fraudulent about that Rutgers win. They controlled the line of scrimmage, both sides of the ball. 25-14 first down edge. Over 400 total yards. Balanced attack. 269 through the air from Kaliakmanis, the Minnesota transfer, who I did not like at quarterback there. I thought he was awful, quite honestly. I'll be blunt. He stunk. He stunk at Minnesota. Simple as that. But he's played pretty solid here at Rutgers. Change of scenery's done well, good for him so far. He can't complain about the numbers. 62.5%. It's a solid enough completion rate. 8 yards per attempt. 646 through the air in 3 games. 6 touchdowns to 1 interception. That's the ratio you want to see from your quarterback. You're making good decisions. You're not turning it over. That's exactly what you want to see from your quarterback. So this is a guy that did not do a thing for me at Minnesota as far as quality play from the position. But Kaliakmanis, the Greek stallion, let's give him his props here so far. At Rutgers, he's been solid at the quarterback spot. And then you can rely on Monangai in the run game as well. This is a challenge here for Washington, too. You're going, obviously, on the road for it's their first road trip of the year. It's been home cooking for them for 4 straight games. They haven't gotten out of the state of Washington this year. Home game against Weber State, home game against Eastern Michigan, Seattle for Washington State in the Apple Cup, and then a home game against Northwestern after that. So this is 4 straight home games. Now you're on the road for the first time all the way to the East Coast. And, of course, short week, too, because it's a Friday night instead of Saturday. And it's Piscataway on a Friday night. So, I don't think of Rutgers as this huge home field advantage. But you better believe for a Friday night national TV game on Fox, this is going to be the Fox game on Friday night, their new TV package. That's going to be a pretty fired up fan base. I think it's going to be a good atmosphere for them at Rutgers for this game on Friday night. So I'm leaning to the home favorite here. Now, to the point of someone in the chat here, Rants, do we love laying points with Rutgers? No. This is not usually let's lay points with team. Rutgers over the years. But we're only asking them to win this game. They're laying less than a field goal. We're not asking them to win by 7 points or 10 points. This is not a team I'm really ready to ask to win by margin, but I think they have enough matchup advantages here in this game where they could just simply win the game, which is all they need to do in this kind of point spread range, only laying 2.5. So I'm definitely interested in the Rutgers side in this game. I've been betting against Washington quite a bit. I took Eastern Michigan plus the points against Washington and cashed. I took Washington State in the Apple Cup and cashed. Yeah, I lost one last week going against them again with Northwestern, as they completely did shut down Northwestern's offense. And look, Jack Losh was just not very good at quarterback for Northwestern. He was not ready for that setting, being on the road against a capable team, and we saw that last week. So to me, this is Rutgers or pass. I still think Washington is down from last year, losing, of course, a great coach in DeBoer, losing Michael Penix Jr. There's no disrespect to Will Rogers or Jed Fish, but a lot of lost production on both sides of the football from last year. You knew there'd be a bit of an adjustment. I know the overall record is still 3-1, but the one loss was by far the best team they played, Washington State. And I think at home in Seattle, by the way, now you're going to play the next best team. You played Rutgers, and you got to fly coast to coast, short week Friday night to do it. It's a bit of a tough spot for me, in my opinion, with the Washington Huskies here. All right, let's go to Saturday. Stanford and Clemson. We've got Clemson 21.5-point home favorites, 57.5 the total in this game. Over for me in this game. I think Clemson's suddenly an over team. I mean, let's be honest about where things stand with Clemson right now and their offense. Other than the Georgia game, which of course people held over their heads for a good period of time because it was that bad for Clemson's offense, for Cade Klubnik and that entire group against Georgia. Since that time, they've been almost unstoppable. Now, can you poke holes in the opponents? Yes. 66 points against an App State team that just got absolutely destroyed and lit up on their home field on a Thursday night last week by South Alabama for 48 points. There's no question it doesn't look as good now, putting up a 66 spot on App State after seeing what App State did on defense against South Alabama. That was atrocious from the Mountaineers of App State last week at home in a national TV game, standalone Thursday night against South Alabama. That was embarrassing defense. That you could make a case that after North Carolina, the next worst defensive performance last week in college football was App State. It was that bad. Gio Lopez was just cooking them in that game, roasting them. They couldn't stop anything through the air, on the ground. So that takes some shine off that Clemson 66-point performance. But they responded and put up another huge number against what was supposed to be a great NC State defense on Saturday. 24 first downs, over 500 total yards, and that's a Clemson offense that was kind to NC State in the second half. Once that game got to 52-7 early in the third quarter, Dabo called the dogs off. He was very, very respectful to Dave Doran and NC State. He knew that team was down to their backup quarterback, that he was struggling mightily in that game on the road in Death Valley. We're already up 52-7. Let's just coast our way to the finish line, and that's what happened. Klubnik comes out of the game, and they end up going to Christopher Vizina the rest of the game at quarterback. Yeah, it was a rough day for C.J. Bailey, rough day for the offense overall, and at least in the first half. Then Clemson put in a lot of second and third stringers in the fourth quarter of that game, and then we started to see NC State's offense work. But I'd consider the 3 touchdowns NC State put up in the fourth quarter pretty much garbage time. Clemson had already, we're going to win this game. Who cares? Let's move on to this one here against Stanford. But the bottom line is, you can quibble about App State. NC State's supposed to be solid on defense this year, or at least was supposed to be. And even I can say now NC State's defense has been a disappointment. That being said, there is still some level of, wow, that's really impressive to have to come out of that game with that kind of take. It's still pretty damn impressive to have 52 points on the board by the 9-minute mark of the third quarter for Clemson's offense. Remember, Clemson's offense that everyone thought, here we go again, same old Clemson offense this year after the Georgia game. Well, they've clearly figured it out. Klubnik's been on fire. 16 for 24, 209 through the air, 3 touchdowns against NC State. Phil Maffa balanced attack, 107 rushing yards as well in that game. The receiving corps has really stepped up, played a lot better so far as well with Adam Randall, Antonio Williams, who had 2 touchdowns, DJ Moore, the tight end. I like the tight end, Jake Brenningstool. He's been good. And look, they're definitely finding their footing on offense here. And they could probably score points here. Like Stanford's defense is still, I don't know, it's not bad, but it's not great. Although I'll give them all the credit in the world. They really bottled up a very good Syracuse offense for most of that game Friday night. That was a great win for Troy Taylor for the Stanford Cardinal, 26-24 on the road, outright as underdogs against Syracuse. Very solid game from really the run game. Chris Davis, Micah Ford, Ashton Daniels. Shout out to my fellow Canadian, Elick Ayalmanor for the Stanford Cardinal. He has some kind of future ahead of him. This guy could play in the NFL, I think. The catch he made, one hand, against Syracuse on Friday night was absolutely outstanding. No question about that. It's a situation where Stanford has an offense this year, in my opinion, a pretty solid one. When you've got potentially an NFL-bound receiver like A.O. Manor to go with, Medicine Hat, Alberta's finest, and he's one heck of a receiver for this Stanford team. It's pretty impressive. And then you've got Cisse, you've got Sam Roush, you've got other receivers there that can make plays for this team. And they haven't even gotten much out of Tiger Bachmeier. He was supposed to be one of the better receivers for this team. Really hasn't gotten much going yet. Daniels can throw it. Daniels has some mobility as well in the pocket. It's a solid Stanford defense, or Stanford offense, I should say. The defense, it was really good against Syracuse, but you also have to remember it's also a defense that got picked apart by TCU. Is Clemson capable of doing that as well for them in this game? That's going to end up being the question. Justin McElvey, get out of here. I mean, I'm not reading off anything. So, but we appreciate you joining. You're the one watching, so thank you for joining us here on Hitting the Books. Meanwhile, as far as Stanford Clemson goes, I like the over here in this game. Like I said, I'm buying into Clemson. Getting things going offensively here in this game. We've seen it 2 weeks in a row against App State and NC State. Stanford now on the road too for a second week in a row. You have to factor that in. I'm going to have to look to see if they went. I got to assume they went back home to Stanford, to Palo Alto. I don't know if they would stay on the East Coast. I don't know if that's going to be the case, but I think it's a situation here where Clemson is going to be able to move the football, put up points against this Stanford team. And on the flip side, I think Stanford can do enough offensively. And even if this is a game like last week where Clemson gets up big against Stanford like they did against NC State, we already saw, we'll put the backups in on defense and we'll let the other team score some points in garbage time. We have no issues doing that. So I like over 57.5. I think that's the way to go about it with this game between Stanford and Clemson. I'm not really looking to step in front of this Clemson freight train that we've seen all of a sudden, but Stanford's a good underdog. Be careful with Stanford when they're getting points. I've said coming into the year, I thought Stanford, when they're getting points, they're going to be a team you're going to be able to make some money with. They covered as an underdog in week 1 in their loss to TCU. We saw them 9-point dog at Syracuse last week, and they win outright. I think it's going to be a spot for – be careful with this one. I know Clemson and Cade Klubnik are lighting it up the last 2 weeks, but this is a Stanford team that is, I think, going to be a pretty good and profitable underdog against the spread this year. And we've already seen them twice in the dog roll this year get the money both times, 2-0 against the spread. So I wouldn't be running the lay more than 3 touchdowns here with Clemson, knowing the prowess Stanford I think has, and the offense has backdoor potential as well in a game where the number is in this kind of range. So keep that in mind. But the primary look for me is the over here when it comes to Stanford and Clemson. All right, Northern Illinois and NC State. We've got the Wolfpack 7-point home favorites, 47 being the total here in this game. Huskies and Wolfpack. I liked Buffalo last week against Northern Illinois. Buffalo, it was a team that I think with Pete Lembo being hired, a guy that's very familiar with the MAC, had a pretty solid run as head coach with Ball State, that it would end up being a pretty decent hire, a nice way to try to get Buffalo back to, the upper echelon again of the MAC. They had kind of fallen since Lance Leipold left for Kansas, and Linguist took over as the head coach. That was not really a great run necessarily for Buffalo after Leipold left. And sure enough, Buffalo, to me, so far this season has been a solid team. And sure enough, Northern Illinois coming off the big win against Notre Dame. And you would think, look, they had a bye week, too, after the massive shocker upsetting Notre Dame 16-14 2 weeks ago as 28-point dogs. They had a bye week after that game. It would give them time to kind of settle down and lock back in, get focused for their first MAC conference game against Buffalo. And unfortunately for them, they were not sharp at all in that game. The offense kind of struggled. Ethan Hampton, 23 of 43, 194 passing yards, 1 interception. The run game was kind of held in check. I mean, 165 rushing yards on 42 rush attempts. So we're talking about a team that, barely averaged. That average is not good. You do the math on that. Northern Illinois with only 3.9 rushing yards per attempt is not really what you want to see. So I look at this as a spot where, Northern Illinois coming off that loss against Buffalo. And Buffalo, like I said, going to be, I think, a little bit of an improved team. What really hurt Northern Illinois in that game was they had 1 fumble loss. They had 1 interception from their quarterback. Buffalo was opportunistic. Buffalo didn't really light it up. Buffalo only had 184 total yards in that game against Northern Illinois. But, they were opportunistic. They got good field position. There were times when Northern Illinois also went for it on 4th down, and Buffalo got good field position from that. And they just found a way, obviously, Buffalo, to win in overtime 23-20. Again, the defense was solid for Northern Illinois, but too many mistakes, too many turnovers. And there's no question that Buffalo took advantage of that. But I'm tempted to get back to Northern Illinois here, +7. I mean, I don't know how you can make a case for NC State laying a touchdown right now. And I get it. This is definitely not the point spread that we would have seen before the season started in this game. There's no way NC State would just be a 7-point home favorite. But the betting markets have devalued NC State, have definitely downgraded them significantly, because you have to downgrade NC State significantly. This is a team that is lost right now. Their defense has even crumbled the last few games. They're playing with a backup quarterback who we've now seen through almost 6 quarters of football not play very well, and CJ Bailey. So, how much confidence does Dave Doran and the coaching staff have in CJ Bailey to be the guy at quarterback moving forward? That's definitely concerning. Grayson McCall, it looks like the latest update on him is week to week. So we don't know if he has been officially ruled out for this game against Northern Illinois. But keep in mind, this is not a Grayson McCall only issue with the offense here for NC State. This is an offensive line issue. This is a lack of playmakers issue. Other than Concepcion, I don't love the receiving core and what we've seen so far from NC State. You look at the ground game, it's been very spotty to this point in the season as well. So there's been issues, but the offensive line just consistently has not been good enough for the NC State Wolfpack. And I think that's where the biggest problems for them lie as far as the offensive side of the football. So I think when you look at this matchup here with Northern Illinois and NC State, we know Northern Illinois is proven to be a giant killer with the win against Notre Dame. We have concerns about NC State, especially along the offensive line. And I think the struggles of the offense, failure to sustain drives and consistently move the football and put up points, is having a reverberating effect on the defense right now, where it's just wearing them down a little bit. I think they have a better defense than you would than they've shown, than they showed last week against Clemson. But when you're on the field that long, and Clemson clearly with a ton of offensive confidence at the moment with the way they've played, and it just snowballed on NC State's defense, I still lean Northern Illinois. I know this is a point spread that we would not be only getting +7 with Northern Illinois had this game been played in week 0 or week 1. I get that. And Northern Illinois is getting some respect for beating Notre Dame, and NC State's been a disappointment this year at 2-2. Including the losses that they suffered, blowout style to Clemson and Tennessee, barely beating a below-average Louisiana Tech team, struggling at home in their first game with Western Carolina. It's all factored into this number. There's no doubt. So you can make the case this is a cheap price and a discount on NC State. I don't know if I can do that, though. against a Northern Illinois team that already showed what they could do, hanging tough with and beating a team like Notre Dame on the road. So I still lean NIU +7 Northern Illinois in this game. I also lean to the under as far as the total goes. I don't think we're going to see points in bunches in this game, especially if McCall is out again. And that's something you're going to want to keep an eye on as we go throughout the week. But right now, leaning to Northern Illinois, leading to the under as well when it comes to this matchup. All right, Louisiana Ragin' Cajuns, Wake Forest. Next up, Wake Forest 3-point home favorite, 61 the total in this game. Great effort from Louisiana, albeit falling short against Tulane last week. That was one of the more entertaining football games early in the day. Last week was that Louisiana and Louisiana-Tulane game. Very, very impressive game. Very exciting game, back and forth. A lot of points, a lot of offense. But Louisiana's defense, not very good, falls short, 41-33. Ben Wooldridge, solid quarterback. I like, obviously, Elijah Davis, great running back for them. And certainly the run game and the pass game was working against Tulane. But unfortunately, the run defense was beyond atrocious. And it's what ended up costing the Ragin' Cajuns a chance to win that game. They could not contain the run game whatsoever, especially Mekhi Hughes, the lead back for Tulane, who went just absolutely wild on that defense. 166 rushing yards for him against that Louisiana defense. So that's definitely something that they're going to have to shore up here as they take on Wake Forest. A Wake Forest team that's off back-to-back losses against Ole Miss and Virginia, but a team that's coming off a bye week with time to prepare. So can they right the ship here against ULL? I think the key here for Wake Forest is, can they take advantage of that run defense of the Cajuns that was just so atrocious against Tulane? And you look at this Cajuns team so far this season, the numbers against the run have been bad. This is not just a one-week thing that occurred to them against Tulane. 85th in the country, 152.7 rushing yards per game allowed. Not good at all as far as defending the run. They've been pushed around at the line of scrimmage. Will Wake Forest be able to take advantage of that is the question. And when you look at Wake Forest, they are a team that, as far as running the football, they haven't had it consistently going for them, just averaging 126.7 rushing yards per game. They've been more so a defense that's thrived through the air. Well, Louisiana's secondary is probably the strength of their defense. And even in the loss against Tulane over the weekend, 41-33, that secondary showed why they are the strength of the Louisiana defense, because Mensa only had 83 passing yards, 11 of 17 for just 83 yards through the air. So it's kind of one of these deals where Wake's strength offensively with Hank Bachmeier is the passing attack, but that's where Louisiana's defense is better. Wake is weaker running the football, but that's also where Louisiana's defense is weaker. So it's kind of like strength on strength, weakness on weakness kind of matchup here with Louisiana and Wake. No doubt from a situational perspective, advantage goes to Wake. They're off a bye, 2 straight losses at home. Does feel like it's a bit of a discount with them. And Louisiana's coming off that grueling back and forth, hard-fought affair against Tulane, falling just short. Might not be easy to ramp it up again, battle back, and find a way to win here on the road against Wake Forest. Very little movement in this number, but I do lean Wake from a situational perspective. Even though I'm not the biggest Hank Bachmeier fan. I'm not. I'm truly not. And I'll give him benefit of the doubt for losing 40-6 to Ole Miss. We know Ole Miss has been one of the best teams in the country so far. But when that game was there to be won against Virginia, the loss before that, he struggled in the fourth quarter. When it was winning time and it was the clutch part of that game, clutch time, it's one of these deals where you got to be able to make the plays, move the team, put the offense in position to score points with the game on the line. Hank Bachmeier did not do that for Wake Forest against Virginia 2 weeks ago, and that continues to be something that plagues him. Just that ability in the big moments to step up and get the job done. Now, this isn't Ole Miss. This isn't Virginia. This is Louisiana. This is a little step down for the Wake Forest offense, especially facing a defense that I still think has some issues. So, I like I said, I lean to Wake here. I also lean to the over, but a lot of people do. This Louisiana offense with Wooldridge at quarterback with the run game, It's a solid, balanced attack. They can probably pose problems for Wake, whose defense hasn't been very good so far this season. But I think Wake can score against Louisiana as well. So the total's already been bet up. I agree with it, 58.5 to 61. But I'm going to side with the situationals here. I think Wake Forest -3, coming off a bye and 2 straight losses. Louisiana off the hard-fought, tough loss against Tulane last week. Wake is sitting in a nice little spot here. The question is, can they take advantage of it? All right, next up, North Carolina and Duke. This Tobacco Road rivalry reignited this Saturday. We've got, looks like Duke 2.5 3-point home favorites, 56 the total. This is a bit of a tricky handicap. It seems like a layup to take Duke. Who's going to want to take North Carolina right after that debacle last week against James Madison? And that's what it was. It was a fucking debacle. It was absolutely atrocious. The defense we saw from North Carolina, shades of a lot of the North Carolina teams that we have seen over the years, not be able to stop anything on that side of the football. You also have to remember that before that James Madison game, which it's hard to explain that. It's hard to contextualize what we saw in that game, that James Madison puts up, 600 yards of offense. How many points at halftime? 53 points at halftime for that James Madison team against North Carolina. Now, I will say, one of those touchdowns was a block punt return for a touchdown for James Madison. Another one was a pick six. So you take 2 of those touchdowns off the board. They really gave up 39 offensive points in that first half, but it's still horrendous, no matter which way you look at it, for the North Carolina defense. How will they answer and how will they respond here coming off a shellacking like that? 70-50 loss to James Madison. We'll have to wait and see. Unless you got North Carolina at a good number against Minnesota, and they might have covered in that game that they won 19-17, first game of the year. Other than that, they haven't covered a point spread since. 0-3 against the spread, 21-point favorite against Charlotte, only a 38-20 win. 38-point favorite against NC Central, 45-10. And then, of course, 11-point favorites against James Madison. They lose 70-50 in that game. So they've been an overvalued commodity. I kind of like what I'm seeing from Duke. Now, Duke hasn't faced the toughest schedule. At least with North Carolina, you played Minnesota, Big Ten team, James Madison. Duke hasn't really played anyone of real quality yet. Elon, Northwestern, UConn, and then Middle Tennessee, who showed again last weekend why they're one of the worst teams in college football right now. But the fact remains, I see there's things I like about Duke. I certainly like the way their offense is trending. And even the defense. Defense had a bad start against Middle Tennessee, but they really shut down the Blue Raiders after that. Malik Murphy, the Texas transfer at quarterback, is getting better. I think more comfortable and more confident by the week. It's what you want to see, certainly, is growth, development, improvement on a week-in, week-out basis at the quarterback spot. And I think Duke is getting that right now from Malik Murphy. That's a positive. So there's definitely a lot of things to like here about Duke and the way they're trending on offense. The defense here will be tested. The one thing North Carolina can do is score points. And even in the loss against James Madison, they scored 50. But, who are they going to turn to at quarterback? Jacoby Criswell was named the starter against James Madison. He played some of that game. And Connor Harrell, of course, got into that game as well a little bit. He got demoted after the game previously to James Madison. Didn't play, of course, last week. It was Jacoby Criswell at quarterback, and he still had some pretty solid numbers, but he also had the 2 interceptions in that game against James Madison and only 58.3% completions. So that's where the concern is. Is there, if they go back to Jacoby Criswell, he's going to have to play better than that, or you're going to have to turn once again to Connor Harrell at quarterback, and I'm not sold on either option that North Carolina has at their disposal right now from the quarterback spot. So I look at this as a game where I feel Duke is we're seeing progress. We're seeing improvement from them. I lean to their side here. Now, North Carolina has won 5 straight in this rivalry against Duke. But last year, and I know those were Mike Elko, the last 2 years, Duke covered both games in defeat. They lost 38-35 at home to North Carolina 2 years ago. Last year, they lost in overtime 47-45. Both of those games flew over the total. I would probably lean with an over here at 56, but at 3 or better, as long as it doesn't go more than -3, I could only take Duke here. I could only take Duke, and it's simple. I think their defense, while it hasn't been tested as much, Duke, based on their schedule, it's still, to me, a defense where I feel that the Duke defense has played solid. I think it's a situation as well where, from a quarterback situation, you have to like the Duke quarterback situation more at this point. We didn't see enough consistency. We saw 2 interceptions, some bad decision-making at times from Jacoby Criswell last week. I think it's definitely a spot here where Duke might be able to take advantage of it, get the stops that maybe North Carolina can't. I think they have the edge at the quarterback position and Malik Murphy as well. And like I say, I like the way Malik Murphy's game is improving and going on and trending on a week-to-week basis here for the Duke Blue Devils. Overall in the season, 11 touchdowns to 4 interceptions. He has thrown 1 interception in every game, but he's negated that with 3 touchdowns in 3 of the 4 games, and still 11-4 touchdown to interception ratio on the season, 64.3 completion rate for Malik Murphy as well. I think you just rely on what still, to me, is the better defense, and plus you've got a head coach that's defensive-minded in Manny Diaz as well. So Duke -3 or better, I would only look in the Blue Devils' direction here. I also lean to the over here when it comes to this rivalry game. All right, Maryland and Indiana next up. Very interesting game here in the Big Ten. We've got Indiana, 7-point home favorites, 55.5 the total in this game. I ain't stepping in front of Indiana. You know my fondness for this Hoosiers team. You know how much I like them. You know how much I'm a fan of Curt Cignetti, the head coach. He continues to be getting just the absolute most out of this team. It's been impressive to watch what we have seen from the Hoosiers so far this season. Curtis Rourke and that offense is in complete control right now. They are slicing and dicing every team they face to this point in the season. They've been absolutely terrific. We see them, of course, so far this year, the 4-0 start. Now, look, it's about to get tougher here because, with all due respect, FIU, Western Illinois, UCLA, Charlotte, Maryland's a lot better than those 4 teams. So this, by far, and the first Big Ten game of the season, Big Ten Conference game here for Indiana, this is going to be a lot tougher for Indiana. Maryland's a capable team, and we just saw Maryland, of course, win back-to-back games against Virginia and Villanova, bouncing back from the loss to Michigan State at home. We'll see if they can carry over the good vibes here. Of course, the quarterback, Billy Edwards, continues to play pretty well. I've been impressed with Billy Edwards' play so far this season for this Maryland team. He's got 8 touchdowns, 2 interceptions on the season. This is by far the best offense that Indiana's defense has played this year. So we'll see how they match up against it. You thought with the UCLA win, 42-13, wow, great win, but how might be showing you how bad UCLA is. But we just saw UCLA give LSU a really tough game over the weekend. So when I look at it here with UCLA going to LSU, giving the Tigers a solid game, it makes that Indiana win against UCLA look even better. They've been great in the trenches. Like I said, Curtis Rourke's given them a downfield passing game. They've been able to run the football with a stable of backs. They have some pretty good receivers as well to work with. Miles Cross, Elijah Surratt, Miles Price. This is a very, very good Indiana team. I think I would lean to -7, laying the points with Indiana here. My one bit of hesitancy is the fact that they are facing probably the best team on their schedule so far. Although I still don't know truly how good Maryland is. They beat Villanova. Virginia's kind of up and down, inconsistent. Michigan State's rebuilding, and yet they lost that game to the Spartans, although Michigan State's already showing signs of being probably ahead of schedule with Jonathan Smith, who we talked about was absolutely a terrific hire for Michigan State. I think it's a spot here where this with this Maryland team going on the road now, too. It's another thing to factor in. Maryland, when you look at their schedule so far, only the one road game, and it was at Virginia, and it was a nice, good, solid win for them. This will be a little bit tougher here against Indiana based on what we've seen from the Hoosiers. Like I said, I ain't stepping in front of Indiana because I've been a believer in this team from day one. I've backed them several times. I laid the points with them against Charlotte. I took them with confidence against UCLA. I've got them over their win total. I even have just a very small flyer on them as a dark horse to win the Big Ten. Do I think they're winning the Big Ten? No, but I just thought at that price it was absolutely impressive to see. That price, I thought it was worth a couple bucks on it just because of my belief in Kurt Signetti turning the program around, which he's already showing signs of it. I'm not stepping in front of Indiana, but there is that little concern deep down inside that, hey, Maryland is going to be a step up from UCLA, and Charlotte with a walk-on third-string quarterback, and Western Illinois, and all the teams they've played. But Indiana or pass still for me. I'm very, very impressed with what I've seen here from the Hoosiers so far this season. All right, we move along. We've got Colorado and UCF next up here in the Big 12. We've got let me see what the number is here with this game. There we go. UCF 14-point home favorite, 62.5 the total here in this game. And UCF's taken money because this line opened 11.5. It's gone up to 14 here in this game. We know the bounce house is a pretty strong home field for UCF. Can give them a solid advantage. Credit to Colorado for not giving up, finding a way to get Ty Baylor on the Hail Mary. Incredible finish between Baylor and Colorado. Hail Mary, last play of the game. The prayer is answered. They get the tie. They force overtime, and then they win in overtime. They score on their first possession. Baylor looks like they're going to match it. And then, of course, fumble at the goal line. Travis Hunter forces it. It goes out the back of the end zone for a touchback. And Colorado with an incredible comeback win against Baylor at home last week. And now you got to go on the road, face UCF, with all due respect to Baylor, a better UCF team than Baylor. I get it. Betting markets don't like this spot for Colorado. They don't trust Colorado on the road. The last time we saw Colorado in a big spot on the road, they got trounced, absolutely destroyed by Nebraska. So I understand there's a lot of anti-Colorado sentiment here in this spot going on the road for this game, facing UCF, a very dangerous offense. That'll be an interesting matchup. The problem is I don't know if we're getting a bargain here with UCF. Now we're laying 2 touchdowns. I don't know if this is the price range I want to take UCF in. Colorado has the look of maybe being one of those teams that, you don't want to lay points with them, and we've seen that on display already this season, or take them as, they were a dog against Nebraska, and they did lose. They did fail to cover, but now you're talking about them getting 2 full touchdowns. It's a little bit more difficult here in this spot to be able to take Colorado, or to take UCF, I should say, laying the 14 points here in this game. That being said, you look at the battle in the trenches. You worry, obviously, about how Colorado is going to line up on that side of the football. The offensive line continues to be a big problem. I have to give Shedeur Sanders a lot of credit because he keeps taking a pounding every single week, and yet he's still standing. He's still finding ways to rally that team on offense, move the football, even though he's getting zero pass protection. They're not running the football with any sort of consistent ability, and that's all a big concern. They're coming off that huge comeback win. Now you're going on the road to the September humidity of Central Florida, and a UCF team off a bye week, too, following the win against TCU. So one of these deals where UCF's just in a phenomenal spot here. Colorado off that big comeback overtime win. That's a negative spot. UCF off a bye week, extra time to prepare. That is a positive spot. And UCF's been very impressive so far through their 3 games, including wins against TCU and Sam Houston State. But I think it is factored into this number. That being said, last time we saw Colorado on the road against a good team, and Colorado State's not a good team. Throw that one out. I know 28-9, they look good in that game. Colorado State's not a very good team. The last time we saw them on the road against a good team, they were a 28-10 loss to Nebraska. So I'm not, like I said, I'm not looking to take Colorado at all. And I was looking to bet UCF here, but I think 14 is, you're not getting a bargain. So I'm probably going to end up off this game as far as the side is concerned. Total, it's pretty high, 63, 62.5. I was looking to bet over, but I don't know if the number is good enough for that. with where it is right now. So I just lean to UCF in the over. I don't think I'll be getting involved, though, personally, in that game. I'd beware with Colorado, though, because Colorado, look, attracts money every single week. Bettors are lining up to bet Colorado because of Deion Sanders and the attention they get, the TV time they get. And it feels like they're trying to dangle a carrot maybe out there with Colorado getting all these points plus 14 as 2 touchdown underdogs. I'm leery of taking Colorado here in this spot. All right, Western Kentucky, Boston College. BC 13-point home favorites, 62.5 the total here in this game. Boston College, of course, very, very hard fought victory for them on Saturday night against Michigan State. They really had to work for that. And credit to Michigan State. This was a team we thought was rebuilding this year. And, they already have a road win against Maryland. They could have definitely won the game Saturday against Boston College. That was a back-and-forth game. In fact, they had the yardage advantage. Actually, it was pretty close. Actually, Boston College, a slight yardage advantage, but 21-15 in first downs for Michigan State. But they could not overcome. And look, he's a young quarterback. He's going to have games like this. They couldn't overcome the 3 interceptions from Aiden Childs in that game for the Michigan State Spartans. The run game struggled as well. K'Ron Lynch-Adams really couldn't get going. 15 rush attempts on 61 rushing yards. So credit to the Boston College run defense. It was very good. It was not the best game either for Thomas Castellanos for Boston College, but he made the plays when he had to, secured the football, no interceptions. So even though he only had 140 passing yards, he has definitely been he didn't do anything to lose the team the game, and he made plays down the stretch to win them the game, including, of course, the big bomb, 42-yard strike with 1:20 left to Lewis Bond to give Boston College the go-ahead game-winning touchdown in that game. They ran the football pretty effectively with Trayshawn Ward in that one. I like what Bill O'Brien's doing. This is a nice, flying under the radar a bit, Boston College, this 3-1 start to the season, including, a hard-fought near victory at Missouri, 27-21, the destruction of Florida State. And I know Florida State's down, but still beating them by 15 on the road is pretty impressive. Hung tough with Missouri, the nice win against Michigan State. But here's the problem. Are we ready to lay, 13 points here with Boston College? Are they that kind of team now? I know they've made improvement. Castellanos has taken strides. The defense is solid. O'Brien's doing a solid job coaching. But are we ready to lay 13 with Boston College here after the Missouri and Michigan State games back-to-back? And then you've got at Virginia next week in your first ACC or second ACC conference game. Bit of a tricky spot here. And the one thing I'll say about Western Kentucky, huge comeback win against Toledo last week, 26-21. They have a better offense now that they made the quarterback change to Caden Veltkamp. Caden Veltkamp's been pretty solid. Now, he did have 2 interceptions, struggled early against Toledo, but he got it going. And once he did, it was a offense that was moving the football up and down the field most of that second half last week against Toledo in that comeback win. So it was impressive for the Western Kentucky offense. And the weakness of Boston College defensively has been the secondary. You've been able to throw against them. It's been hard to run against Boston College, but you've been able to run the football. You've been able to throw the football with some success against them, and that is what Western Kentucky will be looking to do here. So I actually think this could be a spot for the dog, and the number's gone from 11 to 13. I lean Western Kentucky. If it hits 14 for sure, and it still might go up to 14 because it's already moved to 13. I'll probably definitely get involved with Western Kentucky. I think it's a dubious spot. I'm not ready to consider Boston College a reliable double-digit favorite just yet. They're an improving team. They've had a solid start to the year. You have to like the comeback, the win against Michigan State. But do they have enough offense, and is their pass defense against this particular opponent, which likes to throw the football with Caden Veltkamp, is it going to be good enough to win by 2 touchdowns or more in a sandwich spot? With obviously the game against Virginia on deck. That would be a concern for me with taking Boston College here. So I do lean to Western Kentucky here a little bit in this game. All right, let's go to Big Ten action. Next up, Nebraska and Purdue. We've got the Purdue Boilermakers currently, Nebraska 10-point road favorites, 49 the total here in this game. I say lay it with Nebraska. I do. Now, I know they're on the road. They've been at home quite a bit this year, Nebraska, but you got to think after the frustrating home loss to Illinois. And I come out of that not saying, wow, Nebraska, same old Nebraska. Here we go again. Now they're going to start falling apart. I come away from that game very impressed with Illinois because Illinois had already beaten Kansas. Luke Altmaier has improved this year. I've talked about that already. And I was impressed with Illinois. I don't think we downgrade the hell out of Nebraska for losing that game. Is it disappointing to lose that Big Ten game last Friday night at home against Illinois? Absolutely. But I don't think we consider Nebraska a team that's just going to fall apart now. And more than anything, this isn't so much that I, am bullish on Nebraska. It's that you can't like anything you see right now out of Purdue. They've been absolutely horrendous in the last 2 weeks, especially on defense. 66-7 loss to Notre Dame, 38-21 loss on the road at Oregon State last week. And it was the run game, again, that just absolutely crippled this Purdue defense. 341 yards rushing for the Oregon State Beavers last week. Absolutely cannot stop the run at all, Purdue. And they showed it again last week in that loss to the Oregon State Beavers. I mean, they gave up almost 6 yards per carry in that loss to Oregon State last week. I mean, just absolutely horrendous defense from this Purdue team. And it's been both ways, too. It's been against the run and it's been against the pass. But that's now 2 weeks in a row where teams have run for over 300 yards against you. Oregon State put a 341 on the board, rushing yards. Notre Dame put up a 362 in rushing yards against this Purdue defense. That's not what you want to see because Nebraska, while I like Dylan Raiola and the potential he's got certainly at the quarterback spot, this is a Matt Rule team that always, and this goes back to when he coached at Temple and Baylor, it goes back to when he coached in the NFL with the Carolina Panthers. Matt Rule is always looking to be a balanced offense. He's always looking to run the football whenever possible. Now, the run game got bottled up against Illinois. It was a rough night for Illinois trying to run the football. Dante Dowdle only had 72 rushing yards, but he had to work for it. It took him 20 carries to get to those 72 rushing yards. Something tells me it's going to be a little easier for him here against this absolutely sieve run defense of the Purdue Boilermakers here on the road. I actually am going to lay the points here with Nebraska. I think it's a bounce-back spot for them. There's nothing I've seen out of Purdue that indicates, that a turnaround is in the cards for them. And speaking of in the cards, no pun intended, Hudson Card, no, he ain't doing the job as far as I'm concerned either at the quarterback spot on a consistent basis. Against Oregon State, a woeful 7 for 17, sub 50% completions, 56 passing yards only in that game, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. That's simply not going to get the job done. I think it's a nice bounce-back spot for Nebraska. Yeah, it's laying now 10 on the road, but it's Nebraska or pass for me here against this game, in this game against Purdue. All right, Florida State and SMU next up. ACC matchup. Again, got to get used to saying that with SMU now being an ACC team. We've got SMU 5.5-point home favorites in this game. The total sitting at looks like 47.5 pretty much across the board. I cashed a ticket with SMU last week saying that, off the bye week, the loss to BYU, facing a very shaky TCU defense, it was a perfect situation, I think, to get back and bet on SMU coming out of the bye week. And they played a good game. Now, they did have a lot of turnovers go in their favor. TCU was just atrocious as far as the turnover margin in that game. That certainly helped SMU's cause, no doubt. But it was certainly a better performance across the board. Better from the offense. The defense, gave up a lot of garbage points, but a lot of that was kind of like with Clemson, NC State. A lot of that was late in the game. The game was already won. But Kevin Jennings stabilized SMU's offense at the quarterback position. 14 for 19. Very efficient. 2 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, making Rhett Lashley look smart for going to Kevin Jennings instead of Preston Stone at quarterback. He gave them a solid performance. Brashard Smith was great running the football. 3 rushing touchdowns for him against TCU for this SMU team. Again, the defense still gave up, 415 passing yards. And the biggest concern SMU has defensively is that secondary, because if you look at the overall numbers this year, they've been worse against the pass. They've been very good against the run. I think that's a good matchup, though, for SMU's defense here against Florida State. Florida State can't throw the football consistently. We know that. You look at DJ Uiagalelei. He has not been very good as a pocket passer. We've seen it over and over again. This whole Florida State offense has been dreadful. Whatever offense they have gotten largely has been the run game, not so much the passing game. DJU, again, 177 passing yards only, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Believe it or not, it was a better performance than what we had seen previously from him, but it's still not a passing attack that scares you. They don't have those game breakers at receiver that they had last year. There's no Johnny Wilson on this team. There's no Keon Coleman on this team this year. And you can tell it's a weaker receiving core that Florida State has as a result. I think SMU, I would lean to the SMU side here, laying the points. Let's also keep in mind Florida State has been pretty much in Tallahassee most of the season. They had the road trip to Ireland where they lost to Georgia Tech. Then they came home, faced BC, Memphis, and Cal. So a lot of home games. Now they go on the road. This is actually going to be their first true road game of the season, because the Georgia Tech game wasn't a true road game. It was a neutral field. This is going to be the first true road game of the season for Florida State. Like I say, I've got questions about SMU's defense, but most of those questions reside in the secondary. They've actually been pretty good along the D-line as far as stopping the run. And if you can shut down Florida State's run game and the duo that they have in the backfield with Lawrence Toafili as well as Davis, you're going to be Cam Davis, you're going to have success. And I think that is the strength of the SMU defense, is against the run. They're weaker against the pass. I don't know if DJU and Florida State are going to take advantage of that. And they're on the road for their first true road game. SMU's got a little confidence. SMU's going to be fired up, even though with Florida State being having a disappointing season and entering this game at just 1-3 on the season. The fact you get to host Florida State in a conference game, it's going to get SMU stimulated. I like SMU here -5.5. I think they can find a way to win this game by upwards of a touchdown. They looked like a revitalized team a little bit off the bye week, which was good to see. We'll see if they can carry that over here to Saturday at home against FSU. Shout out to everyone in the chat, including Justin, because we do appreciate him tuning in. We really do. And everyone else, of course, thanks for tuning in here to this edition of Hitting the Books. I wish I could tell you where CMAC is. I'm assuming his power is still out. It's unfortunate, but that's the way it goes sometimes. Look, unforeseen circumstances happen, unfortunately, on occasion. But Connor Mack will be back, of course, next week, unless maybe he'll be able to join us later in the show, because we still have a lot of games to get to. But in the meantime, we appreciate you joining us for sure here on this edition of the Hitting the Books show. Hit the like button if you haven't done so already. And we will move on to the next game, which is Kentucky. And it's a very interesting game. Kentucky and Ole Miss. Ole Miss 17.5-point home favorites. The total 53 in this game. I mean, they've looked dynamite so far, Ole Miss. There's no question. Now, it's very interesting, this game, because I don't see Kentucky's offense moving the ball up and down against Ole Miss. That is how shaky Kentucky has been on that side of the football. We saw them do nothing on offense against Georgia. We even saw South Carolina bottle them up. And I know they scored 41 against Ohio, but Ohio was really compromised. They were down to Nick Poulos at quarterback, who was absolutely terrible. They could not really do much of anything on offense. And Kentucky wore them down as the game went on. Now, again, Brock Vandegrift played better, but how much can you take away from a game against Ohio? That ends up being the big question. So it's going to be interesting to see how this fares, how they fare here in this game with Kentucky and Ole Miss, or Kentucky against Ole Miss. I look at Ole Miss here as a situation where we know their offense is dynamite. There's no doubt. With Jackson Dart and company, they're capable of putting up points in bunches. They got the aerial attack, because he can throw for 382 like he did against Georgia Southern. But they've got the run with Henry Parrish is an outstanding receiver, by the way, leading them there. Trey Harris running the football. Offensive line's elite. They can do anything they want to on offense. They can run it. They can throw it. The O-line's good. They've got playmakers down the field. If Kentucky and Kentucky's defense has clearly been the strength of their team, and they did keep Georgia under wraps. But the more I watch the season unfold, right now I have Ole Miss's offense being better than Georgia's right now. That's how good they've been so far this season. Now, they have not faced a tough schedule. Kentucky, defensively at least, will be tough. I don't know about offensively, though, because every time we've asked this Kentucky team to show something offensively against a good team this year, they've been terrible. The 12-point game against Georgia, 12 points, 6 points at home in a 31-6 loss to South Carolina. It's not the kind of offense that I'm really trusting here on the road, too, with this game being in Oxford. I would lay the points before I take them. I would. And if you look at series history, the one concern with that would be, these teams played a couple of years ago. It was a 3-point game, and they've played a lot of close games historically. But, that was then, this is now. It's a little bit better. And remember, they had Liam Cohen, I believe, still as their offensive coordinator the last time these teams played in 2022. I don't think the play calling's been as good. Clearly, Vandegrift has not stepped up here in this kind of a spot against a better team so far this year. So I'd be very hesitant to take and support Kentucky here in this spot. I think it's a situation where, for me, it would be lay the points with Ole Miss or pass. As far as the total is concerned, 53, it seems like it's a correlated game to me. If Ole Miss is going to cover, it's probably got a chance to go over the total because it means their offense opens it up. And if Kentucky is going to stay inside 17.5, for them, it has to be a lower scoring game. They are not going to be able to hang in this game if they give up 31, 35 points to Ole Miss, because I just don't have enough faith in this offense of Kentucky when stepping up in class. So I think that's the way you approach it. If you take Ole Miss, you take the over as well. If you take Kentucky, you take the under probably here in this game. All right, next up, it is Oklahoma State and Kansas State. So we go to the Big 12. Kansas State, 6-point home favorites, 55-56 the total here in this one. Kansas State coming off just a crazy loss to BYU because they looked like early in the game they were in complete control. And then all of a sudden, there's just this one big scoring play after another. Turnovers became an issue with Avery Johnson in Kansas State. The craziest punt return touchdown you'll see, where Kingston, the punt returner for BYU, actually fumbles the return, picks it up down by his own goal line, somehow gets to the edge, and then ends up taking it all the way back for an incredible punt return touchdown. Plays like that were going against Kansas State in that game. And then once that momentum was rolling and the crowd was going nuts in Provo, there was no slowing it down. So it's definitely a Kansas State team that's going to be looking to bounce back here, taking on Oklahoma State. And you got to be concerned about this spot for Oklahoma State. A lot was put into that Utah game. They got the chance to play a Utah team without Cam Rising, a chance to, take advantage of that maybe and win that game, and they just couldn't do it. And here's the problem now. Eventually there was going to be a game where if Ollie Gordon gets shut down and Utah, and there's been a problem all year for Oklahoma State, Ollie Gordon has not been that take over the game running back that we expected from him coming into this season. So I look at this here when it comes to Ollie Gordon for the Oklahoma State Cowboys. Eventually, he's going to have to get it going, because if you start to face some of these better teams like Utah, and I know Kansas State's been shaky at times defensively, but they're still a very capable team. If you continue to get completely shut down in the run game, eventually Alan Bowman's going to face some better teams, and he's not going to always be able to lead the team through the air. And we saw that against Utah. There was no run game, and then Alan Bowman and the passing attack was one-dimensional against Utah, and he struggled. Less than 50% completions, a couple of costly interceptions. It got so bad in the eyes of Mike Gundy that he actually benched Bowman in the second half and went to Garrett Rangel at the quarterback spot for Oklahoma State. So I don't know if I agree with that move, though, from Gundy. I get it. Bowman was struggling in the first half of that game, but it was still pretty close. And then he wasted some time there with Garrett Rangel in the third quarter. And eventually he did go back to Bowman in the fourth quarter, but I didn't love the timing of making the quarterback change when that game was still pretty close for the most part. And then Bowman finally got things going. By then it was too little too late. And they end up falling short in that loss to the Utah Utes on the weekend. So disappointing, to see if Oklahoma State falls short. It was set up well for them. They had a pretty good track record under Mike Gundy against ranked teams at home. They got the ability to face Utah without Cam Rising, and yet they still are in a situation where they couldn't get the job done at home. Now you got to try to turn the page, bounce back here against Kansas State. Kansas State off a loss that's going to have them very, very pissed off and angry. They've taken money 5-6. Now Kansas State is home favorites. But again, it's Gundy as an underdog. I don't like betting against Mike Gundy and Oklahoma State as an underdog. I don't. Doesn't mean I'm going to be on them, but I'm definitely not betting against them as an underdog. And I've seen enough issues with Kansas State's defense and the continuing issues with Avery Johnson's ball security or lack thereof to question whether I'm ready to lay 6 points with Kansas State in this spot. So for me, I'm not involved in this game as of right now. Probably may not be when it comes to by the time this game kicks off on Saturday. I might get to there with Oklahoma State if I see 7 or better. 6, I'll lean that way. Don't know if I'll bet it, but I lean Oklahoma. Like, I just don't go against Mike Gundy as a sizable underdog. To me, it's just not wise to do that. He's been very good in this role over the years. The only question is going to be, can this team get themselves like if you're Oklahoma State, this is a wide open Big 12 still. There's no reason to just push the panic button or get defeated, have a defeatist attitude because of one loss. You got to get back in the saddle, go on the road here in the Little Apple and give it your best shot. There's still a lot of season left. You just can't let one loss linger like this. And I think it's going to be a situation where I'm not ready to count Oklahoma State out just yet. Yeah, good point, G. Martinez. Wake up, C-Mac. It's not him waking up. We need his power to get going. That's what we're waiting on here, C-Mac's power. There we go. Okay, it looks like he will be joining us here in a few moments. So I'll just let him know that we're still going. It looks like C-Mac is going to be on his way. Yeah. There we go. All right. Good stuff. Looks like C-Mac just got his power back. He will be with us here any moment here on the Hitting the Books show. All right, let's continue along here. We got to pick up the pace a little bit. Cincinnati and Texas Tech. We've got Texas Tech, 3.5-point home favorites, 58.5 the total. You can tell I need a drink of water. My voice is starting to get all gravelly right now from talking so long. I'm out. I'm out now when it comes to betting against Cincinnati. That's 2 weeks they've handed it to me. With Miami and then Houston last week, just dead wrong from the beginning. Shockingly bad performance by Houston, who actually destroyed Rice, but maybe that was more Rice being bad because Rice got crushed by Army again last week. And then the hanging tough with Oklahoma like Houston did. And yet they get absolutely annihilated by Cincy, but credit to Cincy. Brendan Sorsby played well. He's actually been getting better, I think, by the week at the quarterback spot for the Bearcats. They can run the ball. They got a balanced offense. It's been impressive. And the defense is getting better. Now, Donovan Smith's not a very good quarterback, and I think they feasted on that last week when they played Houston. They're going to face an offense this week. Let's see how they fare here against Texas Tech. I lean to the over in this game because I like what I'm seeing out of Sorsby. Baron Morton and the Texas Tech offense, they've now played at home 2 weeks in a row. And after some up and down play from the Red Raiders on offense early in the season, they obviously put up a boatload of points against North Texas. I thought the offense played a very good game last week, beating a solid Arizona State team 30-22. Pretty good performance from Morton with 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. Taj Brooks running the football as well for the Red Raiders. So I think Texas Tech at home, where we've seen them now put up 30-plus points in back-to-back games, you can probably have some success here at home against Cincinnati's defense. I think Cincinnati, like I said, I like what I've seen from their offense here the last few weeks. They put up 27-plus in 3 straight games, including the Towson game early in the season. So they've been able to put up some points themselves. I'm not involved in the side here. I would look toward the over, though, as far as the total when it comes to the Bearcats and the Red Raiders. All right, let's go to another Big 12 matchup, TCU and Kansas. And this game is at a neutral field at Arrowhead Stadium, hosting this one, home of the Kansas City Chiefs. We've got the Jayhawks, Kansas, 2-point home favorites, actually 2-point favorites on a neutral field, although obviously with it being at Arrowhead Stadium should still benefit the Kansas faithful as far as turnout is concerned. And the total sitting at 59.5 across the board for this game. There's issues with Kansas right now. This is the first time in the Lance Leipold era that things are kind of not going off the rails, but there's a little bit of a slump now for Kansas. This is the first time they've hit a significant rough patch. The loss at home to UNLV, mistakes, turnovers, inability to finish drives, inability to get stops at key times, all of it plagued Kansas in the home loss to UNLV. And then last week, now I know there was a lightning delay, which delayed the game for a couple hours. But still, you're up 28-17 with 5 minutes to go in the fourth quarter. I know it's on the road. You don't expect your opponent to ever roll over and give up. You've got to find a way to win that game if you're Kansas. You got to wrap it up. You're up by 11 late in the fourth quarter. And then all of a sudden, there's West Virginia scoring two touchdowns in the last 3.5 minutes to turn a 28-17 deficit into a 32-28 comeback win against Kansas. It was a horrible loss for the Jayhawks, and that's now 2 losses in a row, and that's a painful one. And now you've got to try to respond and go on from those 2 losses, and actually it's 3 losses in a row if you count the Illinois loss on the road before that. So all of a sudden, here's Kansas 1-3 straight up, 0-4 against the spread. I'm not rushing to lay points with this team. Defense has been inconsistent. Jalen Daniels actually played decent last week. They ran the football well enough at times and yet still found a way to lose. They haven't covered a point spread yet. The problem is I'm not enamored by their opponent either, TCU. This is not a team that really impresses me. This is not a team where I'm running to back them, and there's a reason I bet against TCU last week. I don't think very highly of their defense. They've given up 101 points in the last 2 games combined against UCF and SMU, and it really doesn't matter how teams have tried to move the football against them, whether it's through the air or on the ground. This team has been gashed both ways, on the ground and through the air the last 2 weeks. Not a defense I want to back, especially away from home. Now, this is a neutral field, but again, at Arrowhead Stadium, it's probably a little bit more of a better proximity for Kansas. So I would only look over the total in this game. 59.5 is the total. TCU is another one of these teams where it seems like they're an over machine until proven otherwise. They've never really had a great defense under Sonny Dykes. And I will say it again, even the national championship season for the TCU Horned Frogs, that was a team where they still gave up a shit ton of yards on the ground, through the air, and they feasted on turnovers, taking the ball away at the right time. I'd argue even in that year they got to the national championship against Georgia, they weren't even a great defense that year. It's just the turnovers masked the problems with them giving up yards. Now they're not forcing the turnovers as much, and they're still giving up all these yards. So I would look to the over in that game, and I would stay clear of the side. I've lost faith in Kansas, but there's no way I'm taking TCU and asking TCU to win a football game with that defense right now. So to me, the only look in that game for me is the over. The lights are back on, and the party is back on in the house of CMAC. The power is back. Power's been restored. CMAC back in the house.
What a shittiest time, Havana. 8 a.m, fucking power out. It's like, ugh. And then they said 10:30 to 11. I'm like, all right. And of course, no. Still waiting. It finally got on like 10 minutes ago. And the problem is, which I wrote you, is everything's draining because I don't have, my laptop, my phone. So it's like, I think I got enough juice here to get through the show. So TCU, Kansas, we're on here?
Yep, TCU, Kansas. What do you think? Let's go.
Let's get to it. Whew, this is ugly. Both 2 teams, you've been backing them, just haven't made you any money. 0-4 ATS, so it's not easy to back either of these teams. And we basically got close to a pick 'em here. Kansas -1.5. You mentioned on the total. How can he not? I think under 60, take this over. TCU can't stop anything. I mean, SMU just handed it off. Like, they didn't even need to throw it, which they did, 137 yards, but they just ran it down their throat, and they looked awful. And on the flip side, TCU, Hoover, this guy is just a gunslinger, and he's going to have big days. He almost threw for 400 yards, which I thought. But, of course, there's always interceptions with this guy. I mean, it's just he is what he is. And I think he'll chuck it around in this one. Kansas does have the better defense in the end. And, yeah, what a tough game for them against West Virginia and still lose. This is like, if it's ever going to happen at basically 1.5, is to take Kansas here. I know, I really don't love it, but other than the over, I think on the side, you have to just think they're at home. This is a game where they have the better
Arrowhead
defense.
Stadium, but it's still.
Oh, this is at Arrowhead. Sorry,
closer proximity to Kansas.
I didn't hear you say that, and I haven't had anything pulled up. We got rain here too while I'm looking at it.
Yep.
Partial rain, 70 degrees. Still neutral field.
Yeah.
No wind. Yeah, a little bit of rain, 70 degrees. Kansas or nothing. I'd have to back them. I don't know if I get to it. I haven't backed them all year. I didn't want them last week. I'd fade against you. I haven't won them at all. But I think if you want to decide here, you take Kansas. But I think you just stick to some points here. It can get over. I mean, look at these scores for TCU.
Yeah.
Last 2 weeks were easy overs, and that Stanford slipped over, but still got there.
All right, good stuff. What we will do before we get to the rest of the games in order of the list, we won't go through every game that I've talked about so far, but I'll just throw it right to you, CMAC. The games up to TCU and Kansas, I always send CMAC a list of the games that we're going to talk about in order. The games prior to TCU, Kansas on that list, starting with Army Temple. I'll just let you have the floor now. If there's any games that you'd really like early in the week, if you don't have a strong opinion, you don't have to mention that game. But what games up till now that you like early in the week?
I don't want to hold us up really here. I'll throw out a couple. That last game you just talked about was Cincy, Texas Tech. One thing I weighted Texas Tech last week, Babanos, and I got a 2.5 on Saturday. And I was like, boom, I'm all over it against Arizona State. I talked about how I liked them at 3. And they're sitting here at 3.5. Cincinnati's look really, really good. But I still don't think they're that good, And Kansas State has problems on defense. So as I won in Texas Tech, I lost that over. And it's just tough. The cap was great. Just field goals. They just couldn't finish. Both those teams just moved the rock. The weather ended up not being that bad. There was chance they thought there could be like wind up to 20. It wasn't. It was 10 to 15. It was fine. They couldn't convert in the end. So on the total, I lean that way. But I think Texas Tech back here at home. I know Cincy might have a little bit better defense, but this is where I've talked about last week with Arizona State, where I want to back them here, especially under a field goal or right around there. That's what I'm looking at. A few others. I don't have a ton with them and I don't want to hold up the show too much. Miami. I was so worried about South Florida. It was just like the smallest play for me. I just put $100 on it. And Miami blew them out. Cam Ward looks really good.
Damn good. They've aced every test so far in Miami. No doubt.
No doubt. Big Friday night at home. And one thing that's done that would happen with last year is I thought their defense was pretty good. And it's shown up. I mean, they haven't really played anybody. Last week was solid, but this will be a bigger test. The disappointment in Virginia Tech has me a little bit scratching my head, because if this was a little bit closer here to 3 touchdowns, I take Virginia Tech, because this is finally the point spread spot where I want to take them. I don't want to take this team as a favorite, nothing like this, but a big game like this, maybe they can hang around. It's just drones. It's just the turnovers. Nothing looks really, really good at all there. So I lean to Voltech. This is a game I think is gettable for Rutgers at home. I still don't love the quarterback play from Kyle. He looked good last week, but I don't trust him. But I think basically at 2.5, you could almost go money line. You take them there. That was about it. I like Northern Illinois. That's one a little bit more. How can you back NC State right now? And I loved Buffalo last week. I love that. I love that money line too.
Yeah,
I put a little bit more than
Buffalo's better than people think. And Pete Lembo was a nice hire. Pete Lembo knows how to win in the MAC. He did a nice job at Ball State years ago, if you remember.
Yeah, just these numbers shouldn't be lame. Just because they lost to Missouri 38-0, and then Northern Illinois beats Notre Dame, so everyone jumps. That's what I look for in these huge dog prices. You know what? I heard you for a second before. Well, I had a little juice on my phone. I kind of like Indiana. I don't love the touchdown, but I'd only lay it with them here.
Yep, I'm a believer.
I don't trust Maryland. Rourke's great. I thought the defense has been pretty good. So that's on my intent, especially if I can get under a touchdown. I think Indiana again here at home. And we're starting to see Maryland. I thought they've looked pretty good in certain spots to start the year. But Indiana, there I'd lay it. That was about it for me in these early games. Oak State, K-State. So K-State with Oak State, they lost there. It just bad early. No, they just weren't very good. The second half, they come back. I kind of wanted them to look impressive to take K-State because I knew K-State wasn't going to get shellacked. Let's not say that. But I love BYU
at home against them. That was nuts. And just in the blink of an eye, they're down 38-6. It was crazy. It was crazy to watch that unfold. Yeah.
Yeah. It just it rolled quick. It was just 3-0 after the first quarter, and then boom, by the third, you just hit it. It was over. So I want to back K-State, but one thing, not at this number. Not at this price. They've been better, and at home is where I like it. But I love Gundy as a dog. Awful loss.
I will not. You will not see me betting against Mike Gundy as an underdog. Period. Especially 6 or more.
That's why it's the number here. While I think this is a great bounce back for K-State at home, I think this is too pricey. Where this should probably be 3.5. That's what I had when I went through everything starting last night. And I still have to look a little bit more. Obviously, we're Monday morning when we do this. I try to get as much as I can. But yeah, that was my other one there was Oak State, the points.
Yeah, you're right, Rance. He's a running back playing quarterback until proven otherwise with Avery Johnson. He does not do it for me as a passing quarterback right now.
He is what he is.
Yeah.
You know, someone had put in the thing. He only had one sort, but he hadn't played much. He hadn't gone on the road much.
Yeah.
And I said, but in a hostile place, and what does he have? He has a few turnovers.
Yeah.
He's catching stuff. Of course, I love doing our shows, but man, in the comment section, the rabid college football fans that go crazy in the comments. One thing, this is a betting show. As much as if you want to go talk about your team, I talked before, go to your local sports show and watch them. The beat writer, go look at all that. We're trying to keep this within a certain time of these games, from a betting perspective, what we're looking at to make cash, because that's the end of the day. That's what we do. And just keep it nice in the comments, in the chat. Right. Keep it respectful.
Right. Hey, I don't care if people beat the hell out of me.
You can rip me, but it's just kind of don't make
I appreciate
falsified information. Yeah.
You can say whatever the hell you want, even if you do hate my guts and you don't like what I'm doing. Yeah.
But kind of just don't bullshit me here. Don't give me bullshit lies. You can just say I stink. I'd rather have that. Yeah. Just like, you blow, buddy.
Yeah.
Don't give me kind of lies of stats. That's all.
That's it. There we go. Good disclaimer. All right, on we go, because we got a lot of games still to go. South Florida and Tulane next up. Tulane 6.5 point home favorites, 64.5 the total in this game. South Florida getting absolutely drilled by Miami, which we talked about earlier. I don't really downgrade South Florida too much. Miami was great, and they've been great. Tulane, meanwhile, off a physical, 41-33 win against against the Louisiana Ragin' Cajuns. We'll see how they fare here. I like Darian Mensah. There's no question about that. We'll see if they can keep it rolling here. John Summerall, known for good defenses. We have not seen it yet, though, from Tulane. They have kind of struggled on that side of the ball. It's really been the offense that's carried them, because they've given up 33 or more now in 3 straight games, 3 straight overs. I like the over here in this game, South Florida, Tulane. I agree with the move up in the total. Sidewise, look, I think coming off the beatdown against Miami, and I don't think I'm going to go against Summerall because I like him too much as a coach, but I'd be leery about laying 6.5 with Tulane, just because I think South Florida might be a little discounted now in the betting markets after just getting their doors blown off by Miami 50-15 last week. And Byron Brown in that offense should still find success here for South Florida against Tulane's defense. But that South Florida defense is still a problem, still a work in progress under Alex Golesh. And South Florida's plays at one of the fastest paces and tempos in the country. So you're going to see a lot of snaps, and that will certainly help if you're going to be looking at the over, which I am in this game. C-Mac, what do you think? South Florida, Tulane.
Yeah, I don't think this is big enough here. This line, I think, is super sharp here. But man, we're not over the touchdown, to look that way. And next week, I've already kind of circled maybe South Florida against Memphis here, where they played them better over the years. Tulane's kind of taken care of them, as they've been pretty good the last 2 or 3 years. And one thing with them, Mensah, but he doesn't maybe have to be great. Only 11-17, 85 yards. When you run for 260, he doesn't have to do that. I think they'll continue to do that. It's just every time South Florida's a dog, I'm a little bit interested. I think this is too short in the end. But for some reason, I think the back door could be open, though, maybe in this game. Maybe. So that's why I'm a little hesitant, because I like South Florida, like I talked about, next week and maybe going forward in some spots, just not here with the 6.5.
Yeah, I'm kind of leaning USF, but I'm on the fence with it. And I really like John Summerall. I do, and Tulane. They are a team that I knew that was a great hire. And like I said, I'm not rushing to step in front of them here, especially with, as C-Mac mentioned, them laying less than a touchdown here. All right, let's go to the Big 12. Back to the Big 12. Arizona and Utah. We've got the Utes 12.5-point home 12-point home favorites, 51 the total in this game. Utah's a tough team to bet against at home, but let's see if Cam Rising plays. Am I going to lay 12 points even at that great home field with Utah with little Zach? Is that what we're going to call him now? Little Zach Wilson, Isaac Wilson at quarterback here for Utah. I'm not sure I want to do that. He wasn't great against Oklahoma State. The defense was great. I wouldn't say his quarterback play was spectacular. We'll see how he fares here against this Arizona defense, which can be a little spotty. We know Arizona doesn't have a great defense. Now, we did see Arizona struggle. While they had a great first drive, I remember, in the road game against Kansas State, then they didn't do anything after that. Still have to respect Noah Fafita and Tetaroa McMillan, of course, the great dynamic quarterback wide receiver combo that this Arizona team has, but the defense is still a bit shaky. There's no doubt. New Mexico moved the ball against them pretty well. They gave up the big number of points to Kansas State, 31 on the road in their last game. They are off a bye, so it is a bye week and extra time to prepare here for Brent Brennan going into this game for Arizona. This is one I'm probably staying away. I'll be honest. I'd be lying if I had a strong opinion. That being said, Utah off the big win, and I'm not ready to if it's not Rising and it's Isaac Wilson, I love that home field, and I'm petrified to bet against it, but not laying 12 with Isaac Wilson. I can tell you that. C-Mac, what do you think?
Yeah, I just don't know if he's in a quarterback you want to lay.
And Whittingham's not going to help you. Only bet the plus in our chat. He's not going to help you with the news on Cam Rising. He is just, he never divulges any. And I love him as a coach, but he does not help the sports bettor out there.
He's all these college football coaches are super tight, but he is like extra. Yeah. And this is kind of getting old.
Player info. Yeah.
With Rising. Wilson was good enough. One thing which makes me go back and look, as much as we talked about that last game, who I like Oak State and Gundy as a dog, Bowman did it. He had a bad game. He had been very, very good. He had a few picks. The Utah defense was dominant, and Utah dominated them in the trenches, dominated them on the ground, dominated them time of possession. 42 minutes they had. Oklahoma State only had 17 in that game, and Wilson just was pretty good. I mean, he did his job.
Kansas State dominated Arizona in the trenches, and if Kansas State's doing that to you, Utah could. That's what worries me for Arizona here. Yeah.
And it's kind of them or nothing here in Salt Lake. It really is. So I can't look at Arizona as much as Fafita after that whole kind of really the second half or really 3/4 of that game. I don't know if they have the defense too, as well they played last year. Babano, the Arizona defense, we'll see.
All right, good one. Next up, we've got it. This is one of these deals where Washington State's not officially in the Mountain West. They're like the Pac-2 now, them and Oregon State, but they play a lot of Mountain West teams on their schedule this year, and this is one of them. Washington State, Boise State. The Broncos 7.5-point home favorites, 65 the total in this game. Maybe the game of the year in college football was San Jose State, Washington State, late Friday night. If you stayed up for it on the East Coast, it was bonkers, man. It was absolutely insane. Crazy shit. Certainly a good betting result. I think you liked San Jose State too in that spot with Washington State coming off the Apple Cup win. And easily the game flew over the total. What a crazy game, double overtime. Washington State comes back and wins it. Just a scintillating game, exciting, crazy stuff. Both teams throw an interception in the first overtime, and it keeps going. I mean, just absolutely nuts, that game. But that's two barn burners for Washington State. And you saw them come out sluggish to start that game against San Jose State. But then they did get it going and they came back and win. But all that energy of the Apple Cup, the emotion, all the energy and the emotion of that crazy game, which went double overtime late into the night against San Jose State, and now you got to try to ramp it up again a third straight week. That does concern me. Is the tank on empty for Washington State this week, going on the road against Boise? But the good news is Washington State's in the point spread role. We like them in getting points. This John Mateer, look, made a ridiculous bonehead decision to throw the football when all they needed was a field goal in that first overtime to win the game. They just kick the field goal, you win, and he threw an interception. It was inexplicable why he did that. But nevertheless, he's playing great. He is. He's running. He can run. I mean, his running ability is crazy how good he is as a running quarterback. He's throwing. He can throw it. He can do it both ways. The offense has been very good for Washington State. And I've seen enough of Boise defensively that I'm not rushing to lay more than a touchdown with them, even on the blue turf. I mean, this is a defense that gave up 37 to Oregon, 45 to Georgia Southern. And I know it's Ashton Genty and an incredible running back, and he's going to pose a lot of problems probably in this game for Washington State, that Wazoo run defense. And Madsen's a pretty good quarterback too. He's been solid in the passing game, although it's been Genty that's been stealing the headlines. And the one thing for Washington State is their run defense. Their pass defense has been worse, actually. Their run defense has been a little bit better, but it's still not great. It's still giving up over 150 rushing yards per game. Boise should be able to score and move the football at will in this game quite a bit with Genty on the ground, Madsen through the air in the passing game. But I think Washington State can score too against this Boise defense. I'm still not overly sold on what I've seen, especially in the two games against Oregon and Georgia Southern. So I like the over more than the side, but I do lean it more than a touchdown to Washington State. I just worry that third straight game after two barn burners, do they have anything left in the tank? If they do, it might be difficult for Boise State and that defense to get a margin here in this game. C-Mac, what do you think?
Yeah, and first road game here for Washington State. 3 home games and the neutral game versus Washington. That always perks me, these teams going on the road for the first time. But it's tough to lay with Boise here. I think the solid offense you talked about. The running game's been really good. Madsen's been solid. There has to be points. Now we're at 65 here. Does that happen again? I'm not so sure. And Washington State, Mateer, I think he could do what he wants against this. Is the Boise State defense going to be able to stop him? I'm not so sure. So, to me, over the touchdown, even though it's on the road and not make mistakes, I kind of lean them with the 7.5. And this one should be fun to watch, if you like points.
Indeed. All right, next up, Texas State, Sam Houston State. This is a very good group of 5 game coming up on Saturday, under the radar. Texas State, 8.5-point road favorites, 56.5 the total. That's Bearcats with a K, by the way, when it comes to Sam Houston State. Sam Houston State's impressing me. Now, they had that one bad game against UCF, but other than that, I said this team would be better this year. They're certainly looking good as far as the win total is concerned. 3-1 start to the year for Sam Houston State. They destroyed New Mexico State 31-11 in their last game. I think they've definitely got better quarterback play from Hunter Watson. Jace Bauer as well has gotten some playing time, but Hunter Watson's also a dual threat. DJ McKinney can run it. They've got Noah Smith leading them at receiver. And more importantly, too, the Sam Houston State defense, has been pretty solid. You take away the UCF game, and a lot of teams are going to struggle stopping UCF. They've been good in every other game. Now, the schedule has come up light beside the UCF game. Rice, Hawaii, New Mexico State, and Texas State's probably the next best team Sam Houston's played since that UCF game. So can they hang in this game is the big question. I think they can. Texas State, laying 8.5. We saw them obviously lose at home to Arizona State. Too many turnovers, too many issues. And if they turn the ball over again and have those issues, and I like Jordan McLeod, getting him as a transfer quarterback from JMU, but definitely it was not a great game as far as turning the football over. They had issues with that. They moved the ball against Arizona State, but too many times they'd have great drives, and then a bad turnover, ill-timed, would kill them in that game. We'll see if they can avoid that here. They're going to have to, because they're not just being asked to win. They've got to win by almost double digits here to cover the number. This is not, by the way, a home game for Sam Houston. This is at NRG Stadium, okay, in Houston. So it's a neutral field for this one between them. But I'm leaning a little bit to Sam Houston. That being said, I don't love it, and I am concerned that they've only played really one good team, UCF, and they got their drilled in that game, Sam Houston. And I would say Texas State's probably the next best team they've played. What do you think here, C-Mac?
Yeah, in that game, in the step up, they did get drilled. And it was kind of
They've been a good dog, Sam Houston. I will say that. That's another thing that kind of leans me in their direction.
Yeah, this is one too where the 10 makes me a little more intrigued because I think Texas State can win this game. Yep. Here, like you talked about on this neutral field. I like the quarterback play. I still don't really believe this Texas State defense, is great. I need to see more of it. And they've gone over all three of their games, and I think Sam Houston does have a better defense. Now, Sam Houston's offense, though, the quarterback position has some issues here. I mean, they want to run it,
yeah.
But I mean, if you're 19 and 21 was Watson for 64 yards and he had 2 picks, like that's not good in this one. But like I said, I think they have a little bit better of the defense that could hang in. I mean their way. This was one that I need a little bit more because I think Texas State could win. But now, they got to win by 10 here.
And that's the concern, no doubt. All right, Mississippi State and Texas. We've got Texas 38.5-point home favorites, 61.5 the total in this game. Bad. Boy, Mississippi State's bad. And it's going to be a tough, rough first year here for Jeff Lebby. I mean, that is Florida. Florida, who's had a dismal season, and Billy Napier, they're calling for him to get fired, and they walk in there and do a number on Mississippi State. So it is bad. Blake Shapen gets injured in that game. He's been ruled out for the season. So now they're down their starting quarterback as well. And it looks like it's going to be, unfortunately, moving forward for better or worse. Michael Van Buren. Reminds me of the Van Buren boys. You got the sign? What's the sign? There we go. Van Buren at quarterback here for the Mississippi State Bulldogs moving forward. Tough times. I want no part of it. Look, 38.5's a lot, but I don't want any part of Mississippi State. Not a chance, especially against this Texas team. And it doesn't even matter anymore. He's questionable. Quinn Ewers, early in the week, Steve Sarkisian not saying if he's ready to return or not, but who cares? Whether it's Ewers back or whether it's Arch Manning, they'll be able to move the football against this horrible defense. You would think that there should not be much problem for either Texas quarterback in this game, regardless of whether it's Ewers or whether it's Manning, to be able to move the football here against Mississippi State. 51-3 for Texas over ULM. They've now scored in the 50s against ULM and UTSA in back-to-back games. I think that probably continues here. I would look at the over, honestly, 61.5, because I think Texas gets into the 50s. You get something out of Mississippi State, it can go over the total. Will you, though, is the question. But, boy, you look at these last 2 games. Now, Texas does have Oklahoma and the Red River rivalry on deck, but it's a bye week after this game, and then they play Oklahoma. So the bye week kind of negates the look ahead a little bit, that they have the bye week before they play Oklahoma in that Red River rivalry game. So I'd still say there's a pretty good chance Texas can cover. Like they beat UTSA by 49, they beat ULM by 48. And I know this is an SEC team. This is a bottom feeder SEC team. This is a horrible SEC team. That they might be able to still win by upwards of 40 in this game. C-Mac, what do you think?
Yeah, how can you take Mississippi State here? Just bad, rough times. And what are you going to get from the quarterback play? The defense has been awful. I mean, the numbers are they're at the bottom, everywhere that you look at, going through everything. Yeah. You talk about on the total, I think it could get over. Like Mississippi State, you just have to do a little bit. And some of these teams have got there on their own. Man, like it's just you need one touchdown. Yep. I've talked about a few teams that hasn't happened. But look at last week with Texas. I mean, all they let the defense was really good. Monroe's bad, but Booty was Booty. Like we talked about. I mean, at 42 yards. Yeah, there was a lot of hype, because it's where he transferred from all this stuff. But,
well, John David Booty was in his family. He was USC quarterback. We're old enough to remember John David Booty.
Oh yeah,
USC quarterback. Yeah.
He was all right. He could be booty at times. But anyways, Texas here, I'd lay it. This is another week where they keep rolling until you talk about the bye and they play Oklahoma.
Yeah, I think so. It's just not possible for me to back in Mississippi State right now. Not after that game against Florida. All right, BYU, Baylor. Baylor 3-point home favorites, 45.5 the total. That's a game you have to win, period, if you're Baylor. You can't lose that game last week against Colorado. Like, God, knock the football down. Do something. Like, you just can't give up that Hail Mary. I mean, it's just simple fundamentals. And that's on Aranda. You're supposed to be a defensive coach by trade, by background. And the fundamentals were out the window on that Hail Mary. Poorly done. They let them convert on the final play to force overtime. And then once that game got to overtime, all the momentum's with Colorado. The place is going nuts in Boulder. And then, of course, Colorado scores an easy touchdown on their first overtime possession. Baylor looks like they're going to answer. Sawyer Robertson and company, but nope. Fumble at the goal line. What a fucking play, though, by Travis Hunter. You've got to hand it to him. He knocked it out. And, of course, it goes through the back of the end zone. Touchback, game over. Colorado wins in overtime. Brutal loss for Baylor. Now they got to bounce back from that here against BYU. That being said, they were better than Colorado for a large part of that game. And if they can somehow flip the switch and get locked in again and not be moping and in the doldrums over that horrible loss and, put it behind them and get ready for this next game, they could win. Because let's be honest, I know BYU was impressive against Kansas State last week, but how much of it was turnovers and then all of a sudden, it was a situation where the game just exploded and Kansas State kind of had a meltdown. It's not BYU, they were good, but a lot of it was Kansas State shooting themselves in the foot, over and over and over again. And then it's just a snowball effect. It is a strong home field when BYU gets going. Now they got to go on the road. I don't know if I'll bet this game, but I'm trying to make a case for Baylor, I guess is what I'm trying to say. C-Mac, what do you think?
Yeah, BYU was good. And, yeah, it just shit rolls downhill. I mean, they had the fumble recovery, BYU. I mean, they scored a few offenses, but they had that punt return was their last one, so a couple scores there. This is where I kind of want to fade BYU. Look, they went to SMU and won outright, covered. I thought they would, but they were getting what? Was that 8 or 10?
That SMU game was terrible. They made mistakes in that game too. That wasn't all BYU.
They were awful.
Yeah,
but I just mean, now it's just 3 here off the horrible. Yeah, man. I mean, not enough coaches. Like, that has to be like not just done a little bit. They need to make sure they practice that Hail Mary, because we've seen it just way too often. Where it just breaks down no one. Yeah, but just knock the freaking ball down, and they have the guys back there. Just a wild finish. If you had Baylor tickets, you had to feel sick to your stomach and feel crazy if you had Colorado and won there. So I think Baylor can do well here at home. Like, BYU's defense, it just, like I said, was good enough. I don't think they were great. K-State still ran. It just was turnovers with them. The only problem is this, to me, would be a little bit better. I just want Baylor as like a pick 'em to really take them. I don't even want to lay 3 points with them, because I think this game maybe could be close and a field goal in this one. And we'll see how the Baylor defense does here at home. BYU red hot ATS too. I mean, they had the last couple last year, and then they've done nothing but win so far this year. So maybe one I'm just not going to be involved with.
All right, next up, South Alabama, LSU. LSU 21-point home favorite, 65 the total. South Alabama in the over for me last week against App State. I needed a last-minute touchdown from App State for that over, but it got there. Gio Lopez is getting better and better and better at the quarterback position for South Alabama. It's been very impressive. Now, look, App State's got ripped on defense 2 weeks in a row by Clemson and South Alabama, so you do have to factor that in a little bit. Was it South Alabama's great offense, or was it App State's horrible defense? But it's not like LSU's a defense we trust laying 21. I don't. Look at the life and death to beat UCLA last week, which got waxed by Indiana 42-13 at home the week before that. There's still issues with the LSU defense. And if you don't believe me, listen to Brian Kelly at halftime, sputtering and stammering over his answers, talking about how disappointed he is in the defense. So there's still all kinds of issues. I could only look at the plus 21 here with South Alabama, especially with this game being after the UCLA game, and then LSU's got bigger fish to fry on deck with their SEC schedule. So I'm not laying 21 with them in this spot and with this defense. Can't do it. It's Ole Miss for them coming up after this. So, I would make a case for South Alabama. 0-5 against the spread in their last 5 games, LSU as well, dating back to last year. South Alabama plus 21 and could probably only play the over. South Alabama's going to play just blazing fast tempo. They've really cranked up the pace this year on offense, South Bama. I don't think their defense is good enough to, completely shut down. They won't completely shut down Nussmeier and the LSU offense and Kyron Lacey. They'll still make their plays and put up points. So I would look at the over. I would only look at South Alabama as well from a side perspective. CMAC, what do you think?
Yeah, the one thing is UCLA is that bad is the second half, though. Like, I guess you could say, is UCLA just that bad when you went through it? Or is LSU's defense, was that their best they probably looked that half? Because UCLA didn't even score. And they just covered in the number. Because I had that over, and I thought it was easy. I need one more touchdown in that game. But man, that was a late ad for me too, that over, and I thought it was money there at halftime. You mentioned it, LSU won a bunch of games, and in their last 10, they're 8-2. This team can't cover. It was just like last year, they just can't cover. When you have a defense that does that, there's just no way in hell am I going to lay points for them at all. So I think, South Alabama can move it. I still have questions with them. This is a step up. Did I already mention it? It is a bye and then Ole Miss, but this is a little bit of a sandwich type spot. So I agree with you here. If you get the 21, if you can, with South Alabama.
Iowa State, Houston, back we go to the Big 12. Iowa State 13.5-point road favorites, 43.5 the total. I kind of want to take Houston. No one's going to want anything to do with them after getting shut out by Cincinnati last week in that game. And I know it was ugly. I did not expect them to get just trucked like that. No. I didn't think highly of Cincinnati all that much, and yet I'm worried. Donovan Smith's terrible, man. That's the one thing that I'm worried about.
That's the problem, yeah.
He's terrible. He is. He's not good. Quarterback play's got to be better. I think the defense just got worn out. Now, the defense did not start the game well. You got to blame the defense, too. They did not start the game strong. Brendan Sorsby goes down the field for Cincinnati early, but 34-0 shutout loss. Oftentimes you'll see a team off a shutout, not just a loss, but a shutout loss. Sometimes they're a good bet the next week. It's just that's a wake-up call. Maybe the other team takes them for granted. Look, Iowa State, they only played one previous road, and it was a great win at Iowa, 20-19. But are they a laid almost 2 touchdowns with on the road type of team? Iowa State, I'm not so sure they are. And this is me a coaching bet. I trust the hell out of Willie. Willie Fritz is a great coach. I'm going to believe and buy into him getting better from his football team, having them better prepared, more ready for this. And it's a home game too. Let's not forget that. So I think it's a buy low opportunity on Houston. And look, there's things to like about Iowa State. Solid defense, decent in the trenches. Rocco Becht keeps making improvement at quarterback for them. And maybe they're capable. And if Houston plays like they did last week, they will lose this game by more than 2 touchdowns. But I'm going to buy into Fritz's coaching. He's a damn good coach to have them better ready for this game. So I'm leaning Houston here. What do you think, C-Mac?
Yeah, I think they play better. And even maybe look at them first half in this one. But it's tough to trust that offense with Smith. Because I think the defense will be a little bit better. I know with Cincinnati, but they just got smacked in the mouth right away. And we're down, it seemed like 14-0 quick in that one. 38 rushes, 149. They threw for 213. A good win. I'm interested if I can get a 14 on Houston here. You talked about no one's going to be on them. And I lean under, but this total just might be too low. Like, I've been cashing on the Houston unders. Iowa State just went over because they beat down Arkansas State in that one. And even the Iowa game got over. So, but they have a very good defense. I'd lean under here at the 43 and Houston.
Yeah, I would lean under too. I think the under is actually a good way to go from for the total in this game.
I think Fritz will have the defense that ready to go.
Here's Willie Fritz's dilemma with the quarterback spot. You can't really go away from Donovan Smith because the other guy is Zion Chris. And this is a guy that transferred here from the Cajuns, the Ragin' Cajuns, Louisiana. He's the exact same quarterback that Donovan Smith is. He can run, he's athletic, but he can't throw a lick. He can't. And he came into that game and replaced Donovan Smith against Cincinnati. He did nothing in the passing game. Nothing.
I saw, he's nothing.
No, 2 for 5, and it was terrible from Zion Chris. So that's your backup. That's your other option. So he's stuck. He's probably stuck having to go back to Donovan Smith next week and just hope for better results. So that's the problem for Houston they're going to have to overcome. They have no downfield passing game from the quarterback position, and it's hard to win these days when that's the case. All right, next up, we've got Oklahoma and Auburn. Oklahoma 2-point road favorites, 46 being the total here in this game. I like Oklahoma's defense a lot, and I thought for a good chunk of that game against Tennessee last week, they hung in there as well as they could against a very dynamic, explosive offense, a great quarterback in Nico Iamaleava, but they cannot overcome this bad offense, and it's an offensive line that's still struggling in the trenches. There's not a lot of playmakers at receiver. I think Sharp, the tight end, is the best thing they got going in the passing game right now. For Oklahoma. So they don't have a ton of perimeter speed and playmakers at receiver. The O-line is struggling. Jackson Arnold hasn't been anything to write home about. Yeah, and to the point, too, where in that Tennessee game, he got benched in that loss to the Volunteers, and they ended up switching quarterbacks to Michael Hawkins. And look, they actually got some offense going with Michael Hawkins. 11 of 18, 132 passing yards, 1 touchdown. To the point now where there's already the door open for Brent Venables here, and they're already asking him early in the week, is Hawkins going to be the quarterback moving forward? Because this offense does need a spark. Will he go back to Jackson Arnold here Saturday against Auburn is the question. Or is it going to be they give Hawkins a chance? Because he actually did. Now, it was late in the game. Tennessee had already wrapped it up, but he did give that Oklahoma offense finally a little bit of a spark. Will he go to Hawkins here on the road against Auburn? Speaking of a guy with quarterback concerns and problems, Hugh Freeze can sympathize with Brent Venables. Hank Brown, not up to the task after a good game against New Mexico, but I think that was more New Mexico is one of the worst defenses in college football. That Hank Brown looked good in that game. He faces Arkansas last week. What ended up happening? Not a good game at all, to the point where Hugh Freeze takes him out. Both of these guys benched their starting quarterback last week. Hugh Freeze benches Hank Brown, goes back to Peyton Thorne at quarterback. Wasn't really all that much better. They lose to Arkansas. Offense struggles again. Under. How do you not look under in this game? I mean, these are two teams with quarterback concerns. We don't know who's going to start. Is it going to be the number one incumbent, Thorne or Arnold, or is it going to be the backup? Hank Brown. Do they go back to him, Auburn? Do they go to Hawkins, Oklahoma? A lot of quarterback questions. But the defense for Oklahoma is by far the better unit. They hung in there against a mighty strong, tough, explosive Tennessee offense. I don't see Auburn moving the football up and down against Oklahoma's defense here. But Oklahoma's offense is a work in progress. Auburn, at least defensively, you'd even have to say their defense is not as good as Oklahoma's, but their defense is still better than their offense probably right now. So I would lean under in this game. It's very difficult for me to back either side right now with the quarterback issues. C-Mac, what do you think?
I know. I mean, Auburn, they think Brown is a guy. I mean, just awful. It's 3 picks, and they got to go back to Peyton Thorne. It's just, wow, what a mess there for Auburn. But you hit on it real quick on the total. I think both these two teams have to lean on their defenses a little bit, and just try not to have turnovers in this game, because I lean to this under here at 46. That's only what I'd be on in this game. Go back to Tennessee. The biggest spot, Jackson, are just the lights were big, but Tennessee fumbles. They get the ball. It's right there before half, and they're at the 6-5 yard line, and he fumbles. That was just, it was 10-3 at that point in the game. And Tennessee did pull away. They were the better team and probably would have pulled away there. But that was kind of it right there. They could have been 10-10, maybe at least 10-6 going into half. And, it didn't happen. Then he fumbled later on in the game. So he'll be back? I don't know. And then you talked about it. It was just all with Hawkins, junk time. I mean, he did look okay, but 11 for 18. So we'll see. There's still problems here with the offensive line. The receivers just aren't getting much there for Oklahoma. But I think you have to lean just on their defense here. It's kind of weird to say with Oklahoma. I mean, I think that's just the better unit of these two sides of the ball.
Yeah, I think the under is the best approach when it comes to this game. I would agree with that. All right, next up, we've got a great matchup, a little bit of a Mountain West showdown here. It certainly is. Fresno State and UNLV. UNLV, 3.5-point home favorites, 52 the total in this game. They're going to be building a statue of Barry Odom outside Sam Boyd Stadium if this keeps up. This has been quite the
well, they're Allegiant now, but that would be cool.
Right. Yeah. You're right. Allegiant Stadium. You're right. I keep thinking of the old stadium, but yeah, I mean, they've been brilliant, under Barry Odom. It's been a remarkable renaissance. They've been a point spread machine. They're already 3-0 straight up, 3-0 against the spread this year. Blowout win at Houston, blowout win against Utah Tech, but then the impressive win was going on the road beating Kansas. Although I know Kansas has stumbled and lost 3 in a row. So the question is, how impressive are we? How impressed are we with that win? But UNLV, I'm not going against them now. They're a point spread machine. Now they're favored. A lot of times they're underdogs, and now they're favored. They're by more than a field goal. And Fresno's capable with Mikey Keene. It's a good offense. It's a defense that's solid enough. And the one flaw that UNLV still has, I think their defense is okay. I think their run game's solid, but is Sluka, their quarterback, who can run. He's a great, tough physical runner. He'll run in between the tackles, take a beating to get yardage running the football from the quarterback spot. But is he a good enough pocket passer? Long term is still the question we have with him. That's the issue I would have with UNLV and the big question I would have with them moving forward. But they have been, like I said, they've been a point spread machine. There's no denying that whatsoever. And the one thing that would concern me for Fresno going into this game is that the run defense is a little shaky. It's not great. It's middle of the pack. So if UNLV can run the football, they might have success here. I'm just not going against Barry Odom, UNLV at home. They've been a point spread machine. Just not going against. Doesn't mean I'm going to take them, but for me, it's UNLV or pass. C-Mac, what do you think?
Yeah, and in that game, Fresno, the defense was just good and kind of good enough. And New Mexico had turnovers, but the yards were there in that game. And they took care of business 38-21. But watch out, New Mexico. They could still, move the ball here. And that was pretty dirty, depending on the number you got on that over of that game, and right on 59.
Right around the number. Yep.
UNLV is off the bye, off the big win against Kansas. I think this kid is really good, dual threat, but he isn't a pocket passer. I have to see it. Yeah, it's not there. But it's just take down and run it. And this UNLV defense, every time I think they're not that great, they've stepped up so far this year. I mean, on who they played, you know what I mean? In the Kansas game, the second half was great. And last year they gave up some big points to some teams, but they were unbelievable with turnovers. Can that continue? I think this is just a great football game here. I don't have anything on it. One thing, UNLV now favorite, laying 3.5. Just that's the new thing now. They would always be getting points in this spot, or at least to pick them. So, and there's the hook in this game that's got me a little bit staying off too.
All right, next up we've got, as we continue along here on hitting the books, Oregon UCLA. Oregon 24-point road favorites, 55.5 the total. I would lay it or pass. Doesn't mean I'm gonna, but look at UCLA. Home to Indiana, they get their doors blown off. They were actually then a road trip all the way to the east to Baton Rouge, Louisiana. You play LSU. Now you're flying all the way back home to the Rose Bowl and playing Oregon. So they've done the west to east to west again travel the last week and a bit. That's tricky. That's tough if you're UCLA. So the scheduling spot's not great. Oregon's capable of running it up. Hell, if Indiana's beaten them 43 to whatever it was a huge 43-14 or whatever. I mean, that's not good against and Oregon found their footing finally against Oregon State in the Civil War. It finally looked like the explosive quick strike, put up points in bunches offense that we expected from Oregon this year with Dylan Gabriel at quarterback with that beat down over Oregon State 49-14. They're off a bye week as well. They only have Michigan State on deck, so no look ahead for Oregon. Tough travel situation here for UCLA. I would look at Oregon minus the points or Oregon team total over in some form here in this game. C-Mac, what do you think?
Yeah, I think their team total might be good in this one. And like if UCLA can just do a little bit, I think this whole game could get over. I mean, the whole problem last against LSU, they get shut out in the second half of that game. This is kind of a shit, even though they're back here, back at home in the Rose Bowl. And what do you take from Oregon? Like, the great second half against Oregon State, where, now that the bye week, they should be fresh. Yeah, I mean, I don't mind the lane. I think you just take maybe their team total. I do think UCLA has the defense is just as bad as the offense is. Man, the defense is not as good. That helped them last year. The run defense was excellent, top 5 in the country. It's just they haven't been good on that side of the ball too. When that happens, everything's going south. So.
Yeah, it is. And like I said, if I see UCLA lose 42-13 to Indiana, that's not inspiring confidence in them, even getting all these points here against Oregon, coming off a bye week too in this one. All right, Arkansas and Texas A&M. This is a neutral field, by the way, as it usually is. This game's always played, this annual game with these two teams at Jerry's Palace.
Jerry's World
Stadium. Yep. Texas A&M 3.5-point favorites, 52 the total. Great game, really is. I mean, A&M, look, credit to them. They're not lost without Wegman. He's week to week. We'll see if Connor Wegman's able to return here for this game. If not, they're going to go to Marcel Reed again at quarterback, who is solid. He's been solid so far at the quarterback spot for A&M in these 2 games that he's played. You look at the numbers: 4 touchdowns, no interceptions. Not a great completion rate, 56%. You'd like to see that improve a bit. We'll have to wait and see how this goes. But I look at Arkansas. I like their offense, Talon Green and company. Defense was impressive in the win against Auburn. How much of that impressive defensive effort, though, was Auburn's offense looking pretty atrocious? That's what you kind of have to ask yourself here in this game. They're going to play fast, and I lost with the over in that Arkansas-Auburn game. This total 52. Can A&M score enough? Is Arkansas going to score enough against? And their offense has been solid, but this is the best defense they played. Let's keep that in mind. It's probably a better defense than Oklahoma State. Certainly better defense than Auburn and UAB. Let's see how they fare, because the A&M does have a pretty solid defense. And I don't downgrade A&M, C-Mac, because they only beat Bowling Green by 6. Bowling Green's a hell of a team, and Bowling Green gave Penn State fits. So I don't look at that and say, what's wrong with A&M? They only beat Bowling Green by 6. Bowling Green's damn good. And they almost beat Penn State. So keep that in mind. So really tough game. I don't have a strong feel for it at the beginning of the week. We'll see if Reed's back at quarterback. Arkansas is usually a good dog. This has been a very, hard-fought series. Now, A&M's gotten the better of it. They've won 2 in a row, 23-21, 34-22. We'll see if they carry that over. They're probably a better team and better coached, obviously, with Elko now. It does kind of feel you're getting a discount right now with A&M, honestly, in this game. And I'm leaning to the Aggies, but I don't know if I'll bet it or get there with it. C-Mac, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm leaning the other way here with Arkansas. Even at 3.5, maybe this is a discount. One thing you have with both these teams is running quarterbacks.
Yep.
If Reed stays in, we'll see. I think he probably one more week, but we'll have to wait on that. But for Arkansas, same thing with Green. And, he wasn't the sharpest. Auburn was just dreadful. He had a couple picks, 12 of 27, 150. But he could run it. He had 18 attempts for 80 yards. They were able to run it. It's kind of like what gives you this Arkansas offensive line, who wins the line of scrimmage, and this Texas A&M D line in this game. But to me, I'd go to the total. If we see that and just more running, give me the under here. I thought this was a little bit too high. We're at that 51-52 important number, the under here.
All right, looking at the under here, CMAC with this matchup here, traditional matchup, A&M and Arkansas. All right, we move along. Louisville and Notre Dame. Very interesting game here. Notre Dame 6.5-point home favorites, 48 the total. No, it wasn't the scare with another MAC team in Miami O last week that the Northern Illinois game turned out to be for Notre Dame. But still, it was not easy. It took a while to finally put Miami, Ohio away. Miami, Ohio was terrible on offense that whole game. I don't know what the hell is wrong with Brett Gabbert. You talk about regression. He has not been the same quarterback since that injury. He's had a really disappointing year for Miami O. But the defense held them in it. It took a while for Riley Leonard and the Notre Dame offense to get going. They're laying 6.5 here. I've been impressed with Louisville now. I've got to give them credit finally. Now, I thought Georgia Tech deserved to cover. They outgained Louisville. They were in Louisville territory most of that game, and they just screwed up, missed field goals, blocked field goals, turnovers on downs multiple times, including the end when they had a chance to get a backdoor cover and put that game over the total. And they failed late in the fourth quarter, much to my frustration. But Louisville found a way to win. And Tyler Shuck's been great. He's been terrific throwing the ball. He's been great. And finally, he played a good team, Georgia Tech, and he still had a very good game throwing the football. They might be a live dog here. Jeff Brom, good coach. We trust him in these spots. I think he's got a quarterback he has confidence in. I'm definitely interested in Louisville plus points here. CMAC, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm interested with Louisville too in this game. Like, what do we get here from Notre Dame at home? I don't know. After just liking the under and them against A&M that first week, like, I don't want to back them at all. I really don't want to here at all. One thing I do think, their defense still is very, very good and talented, which we've got to. And in this game, I kind of lean under in it. And I don't know what to make of Louisville's defense. I thought they were pretty good. And down the stretch, we're good. And, hey, if they covered Louisville, but that you got to feel good if you were on that side. Because Tech, basically, they outgained them. If you looked at everything, they're down there. It just don't, downs. They went for it. Don't get it. Missed the field goal. Downs again. But, man, when basically it was that game was tight the whole time. You know what I mean? It was just back and forth right there. So if you had that was a tough beat in that one. But I think Shuck, he's a big key for me here because I do like his arm, Can we get enough from him against this Notre Dame defense? I think so. I lean their way in this game, especially if I could get a touchdown. Maybe I'd look to really take Louisville because we got 6s and 6.5s, right? A lot of Notre Dame love.
6.5 is out there right now. Yep.
I get the initial maybe Notre Dame's. This is a big game, but yeah. So under for me right now and Louisville here a little bit.
All right, Big Ten, Illinois, Penn State. Penn State 17.5-point home favorites, 47.5 the total here in this one. I'm starting to drink the Illinois Kool-Aid a little bit. That was damn impressive to me. Nebraska's getting all the hype, all the praise for their start, and Illinois goes in there, wins outright as underdogs, and they outplayed Nebraska. Defense made the stops. Nebraska couldn't stop the run game. Luke Altmaier had a very good, clean game for the most part in the win against Nebraska, 31-24, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions. Look, he deserved to get ripped and criticized in the past, Luke Altmaier, last year and before, because he wasn't very good. You got to give him his credit now. To go into Nebraska, have 77% completions, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions. He now has 10 touchdowns, no interceptions on the year, Luke Altmaier. This is the best football he's played at quarterback in his career. And that's Ole Miss and Illinois combined. And it's not even close. This is easily the best I've ever seen him play. And it's definitely helped this team. They're now they always had a solid run game. And now you got the quarterback playing mistake-free football, making plays, throwing it. Definitely and to go with the defense, which is pretty solid. It was good against Kansas. It made the stops it had to against Nebraska. All of a sudden, you got to like what you're seeing from Brett Bielema's team. Still undefeated, of course, as well, which is great to see.
Mm-hmm.
Again, 71.4% completions this year for Altmaier. I mean, this is staggering how well he's played. I didn't see this coming because he was a mess last year And look at the way he's playing so far. So Altmaier deserves credit. He needed to pick his game up, and so far, so good. He's doing that. And that was a great win on the road against Nebraska. I know Penn State's mighty good when they're on their game. And Drew Aller, and they've finally got an explosive offense. They've got Allen and Singleton in the backfield, the two great running backs. They've got good weapons at receiver. The O-line is good. The play caller, Colton Nickey, is finally letting them throw the ball downfield. And to go with that defense, that makes Penn State very scary. But we're talking about an Illinois team that is 4-0, perfect on the season, straight up. They've been a point spread machine. Long-term, Brett, I saw the stat, but it's damn good with Brett Bielema as a road underdog. He's been outstanding as a road underdog, including here at Illinois. At more than 17, I'm very interested in Illinois. Now, I know Penn State, their A game, it could be good enough to win big. And what if Altmaier mistakes? But I haven't seen Altmaier mistakes. He went on the road and played a mistake-free game. If he cannot make those mistakes, if he continues to throw up a goose egg in the interception category, he's going to give Illinois a chance to compete in this game, in my opinion. So Illinois plus 17.5. And let's not forget, Penn State was taken to the wire by Bowling Green recently at home. So I think Illinois can do enough to hang inside a pretty big number here. C-Mac, what do you think?
Yeah, last year at Illinois was 30-17. That give you a push. They cover that. Penn State was favored by 14 in that one. I just worry Bad Altmaier shows up here. This is it. When you bet, he's very looked good, and he hasn't done it this year. That's in the back of my mind.
They also won at Happy Valley 20-18 the last time they were here, Illinois, 2 years ago.
They did, yeah. Yeah, they've had some bad games there, but they did. I remember that game. I think that was that late field goal there, 2018. Oh, yeah, in OT, back and forth. Wow, that total, it still stayed under, even in OT. Wow. Yeah, when Penn State's humming, though, I worry. I want to be on Illinois. This is like a wait for me. And I don't know if I want to pull the trigger because everything we do college football, it's like 4-0, 3-0. Look who they beat. And this will not be, it'll be raucous there. And it won't be easy for Illinois. So I look out. But it's a big number here at 17. So as of now, I got to stay off of this one until I might move on it. Because I worry Penn State, this could be a big win and cover.
All right. Connor Mack's still a little concerned with all. I don't blame him. But eventually there's got to come a point where it's like he keeps putting up these great numbers. He's not making mistakes. Will it continue here, though, against Penn State? Nebraska's defense is good. Penn State's defense, though, is better. It is.
It's better. Yeah, and I think Illinois' defense is pretty good, but we'll see here. I want to see more of it. That's all.
Minnesota, Michigan, another Big Ten match. In fact, this is a lot of Big Ten games to wrap up the slate here on the show. Minnesota, Michigan. We've got Michigan 9-point home favorites, 38 the total. For me, this is hold your nose, take the ugly underdog. Michigan off the huge win against USC. There's still no downfield passing game. It's a miracle they beat USC. Alex Orji had nothing throwing the football. USC, you know how bad that is? You know why I'm still, as far as USC's defense, hesitant to pronounce that they're back? And look, DeAnton Lynn had a nice showing with that defense through the first few weeks, LSU, Utah State earlier on. That Michigan team could only run the football. There was no threat of a passing game at all. They loaded up the box, and they still couldn't stop the run when the game was on the line. How did you let that big, 80-yard run it was to set Michigan up in the red zone to eventually win that game in the last 2 minutes? You had one job as a defense. Stop the fucking run. They can't throw on you. This guy can't throw worth a hill.
He wasn't going over the top.
Yeah. No way. Not a chance. So the only way you were going to move the football against them was running it, and USC couldn't stop it with the game on the line. They got beaten up in the trenches, and the run game put that game away for Michigan. That's why I said I'm still not sold yet on USC's defense. Game on the line. They can't throw the ball at all, this quarterback, and you still can't stop the run. That told me all I needed to know about USC's defense. It's not all the way back, folks. Not yet. And Michigan took advantage, though. They found a way. But I'm not laying 9 with a guy that can barely make a forward pass, a completed forward pass. And that's the case right now with Alex Orji. Now you got to lay 9 against a Minnesota team that, look, their offense is pretty bad too. Don't get me wrong, but at least their defense has been tough. It's hung in there. They got worn down by Iowa and the run game in the second half against. Eventually, when you go 2-3 and out so often on offense, your defense is going to get tired. And they just, he's a great running back too, Caleb Johnson for Iowa.
Yeah, Iowa Johnson. Yeah.
Yeah, he just wore down that tired, exhausted Minnesota defense that was on the field for so long in that game. 206 rushing yards. Brosmer has not been great. He was good at New Hampshire in the FCS, but here at Minnesota, he's given basically Minnesota the same erratic, mediocre at best quarterback play that every other recent Minnesota quarterback pretty much has given them. So that's the concern here, is that defense on the road, or that offense on the road against Michigan's defense is going to have a tough time. But I don't trust Michigan's offense with Orji and no passing game to cover a 9-point spread like this. So I lean Minnesota. It's a hold your nose, take the ugly underdog, maybe a small letdown for Michigan after a huge win against USC. I lean Minnesota +9. The under is probably the best way to go, and I understand fully why the total's gone from 40 down to 38 in this game. C-Mac, what do you think?
Yeah, I get it. It's pretty low, though, in this one. And there were holes, though. You mentioned how they got worn down. Like, what Iowa did is the same thing Michigan's going to do. They can't throw it, like you just talked about with Orji. Like, Iowa 45 for 272 against Minnesota. I mean, they threw for 62 yards. Does anything really change? I get, they are off the big win. Man, I want nothing here. I want the pass next. Yeah, because I don't want to lay it. I think Michigan could win this game, and it's showing just maybe, and it shows just what Iowa did, run it. But this is going to be a problem for them going forward when you can't throw it. There'll be issues.
I understand that. Neither offense is scintillating right now, and that's putting it mildly. All right, Wisconsin and USC. We've got USC 14.5-point home favorites, 50.5 being the total here in this game. I think it's a nice spot for USC back home at the Coliseum there, maybe to get some good vibes going again, roll over someone. Wisconsin might be a team you can roll over right now. And look, Tyler Van Dyke's out for the season. Not that that's a big loss. I don't think highly of him as a quarterback. But Braden Locke doesn't appear to be the answer. And Braden Locke is going to be the starter here for Wisconsin. If you see the way he played last year and the way he's played against Alabama when he entered that game after Van Dyke got hurt, it was not good. Not good at all for Wisconsin. The whole offense for Wisconsin's been very underwhelming so far this year. And if they fall behind an angry, frustrated USC team after losing that game against Michigan last week, they don't have the offense to go through the back door on you. And as much as I just started, ripping USC's defense a little bit, back home now against a very, very limited Wisconsin offense, even that USC defense is capable of a solid effort here and potentially a bounce back showing. It's also going to be Wisconsin's first, road trip out to the West Coast this season. Let's see how they handle that. They are off a bye week. That's the one thing that's in Wisconsin's favor. They have not played since that Alabama loss, 42-10. Does that help Luke Fickell get his team ready to go for this one? I think situationally it's a lean to USC for me. The question is, A, do you trust them defensively in this price range? And B, do you trust going against Wisconsin off a bye week, even if their offense is very, very in a bad way right now? That's the question you have to ask. Maybe a lean to the under. And it's not easy to bet an under in a USC game, but this one might end up staying under the number. C-Mac, what do you think?
This is one that's tough because how much of Wisconsin downgrade is this offense here? With Locke, I know Van Dyke was out. I wasn't high on him anyways in this game. They did have the bye. I just haven't seen enough. And one thing, I don't know if Wisconsin's defense, has been great either. I think they're pretty good. But in this game, and Moss, even the big thing too, Michigan didn't turn the ball over. SC did twice. Moss had a pick. They had a fumble that they lost. But he still threw for 283. That was pretty good. This is a big, big price. And I don't know if SC could get maybe some stops. I think Wisconsin could run the ball here. I'm looking at Wisconsin in kind of a when nobody wants them, maybe heading out west, getting 2 touchdowns here.
All right, like in the maybe Wisconsin here plus 14.5. They are
Just
off
a team that's been awful against the spread. I didn't want them against Bama, whether lock one out or not, but maybe this is the time. I'm gonna look into a few more things, but I think let's see if they could be live.
All right, it'll be interesting. All right, we're down to our last 2 games now on this edition of Hitting the Books, and this is one of the biggest games of the entire weekend. Georgia, Alabama, rivalry renewed in the SEC. This should be awesome. Georgia 2-point road favorites, 48.5 the total here in this game. 7:30. It'll be your Chris Fowler, Kirk Herbstreit special on ABC. Should be great. Looking forward to it. I'm interested in Bama here. I got to admit. And I know they got to win this game in order to cover the number because they're only a 2-point home underdog. But if Georgia doesn't improve offensively on what they showed me against Kentucky, they're not winning this game. They were fortunate to escape by the skin of their teeth with a rough offensive night from Carson Beck and the entire Georgia Bulldogs offense against Kentucky because Kentucky's got no offense themselves. They won't escape Alabama with an offensive game like that because unlike Kentucky, Alabama's got a pretty good quarterback in Jalen Milroe. Unlike Kentucky, Alabama has a good offensive mind and a good offensive game planner, an offensive scheme designer in Kalen DeBoer, who brought one of his offensive coaches, Nick Sheridan, from Washington to be the offensive coordinator. They will not get away with putrid offense in this game on the road in Tuscaloosa at night against Alabama. And that's the critical component of this handicap, C-Mac. Can Georgia improve offense? If Georgia plays up to their capability, because I think they could be an excellent offense. They were supposed to be. But too many times this year, especially that Kentucky game, they didn't get – even the Clemson game, where even though they won big, it took a while for Georgia's offense to really get it kicked into high gear against Dabo and Clemson in that game. And then in the other games, there's been times where – they just for 4 quarters have not been completely lighting it up the way we expected. So, again, Clemson, it took a while. Tennessee Tech, you can't put much into that. And the Kentucky game was alarming. 21.5-point favorites, 13-12, only 160 passing yards. They couldn't run the football. Trevor Etienne only had 79 rushing yards on 19 attempts. If the offense is going to stagnate like that here, I think Alabama's got a great shot to win this game. It's that simple. And the question is the Alabama defense, which hasn't been overly tested to this point of the season when you look at who they've gone against. South Alabama, Western Kentucky, and Wisconsin, you will be tested more by Georgia. But I don't know. The more I watch Georgia, the more I kind of think their offensive issues are not just a one-game thing with Kentucky. It could continue here. And if it's a close game late, and I think it probably will be, who's going to make the big play to win the game offensively? Carson Beck or Milroe? Who's going to make the big play call late in the game? The Georgia offensive coordinator or Kalen DeBoer, one of the great minds in college football on offense from a coaching standpoint? I trust DeBoer with my life in a spot like that. So I'm interested in Bama to get the job done here and hand Georgia their first loss of the season. Leaning that way at the moment. Obviously, this is a great watch. Get your popcorn ready for this one on Saturday night. C-Mac, what do you think here? Georgia, Alabama.
Yeah, Bama here at night. It's just as big as it gets here in college football. I want to get to the total first.
One thing I'll say before you continue, neither team is out of the playoffs, obviously, with a loss. This is not the old days where one loss and you're done. Both teams still an excellent chance and probably do get in the playoffs even if they lose this game.
Yeah. I want to get to the total because one thing in the past years is even with these teams who have great defenses, these games have gone over the Bano. And even this number now at 48.5, it'd go over the last 2 games. We got to 51. And those totals were a little higher. It stayed under. Georgia has the defense, I think. But it's just when these teams get together, their studs, their speed just seems to work, and the offense clicks.
And now you've got
So
DeBoer, a little bit more of a pass-heavy guy, a little more quicker tempo, just a little bit more quicker tempo, and that certainly helps the over as well.
And how much Georgia, they've looked so good and so dominant. Like, I think the defense is really for real. Kentucky got 12, but nothing against Clemson. But this is their first real test where they played anybody. In the end, normally I'm like, take this under with Georgia. Maybe this keeps going down. I'm going to go the other way, which I've done in national championship games and, the semifinals where these teams have met or the regular season and they've gotten over. I might look that way in this one. But I think Bama is live. The Georgia struggles on offense. We'll see. It's still early. And both these teams are off buys too. They didn't play last week, right, Bama? Yeah, they didn't play. So they were all
usually before these big games, like these showdown games, they give both teams a bye week. Yes, that's
both
the case.
Both buys. Yeah. And one other one, Bama too has been a great over team. I know in some of these opponents, but they're a great over team. And on the flip side, Georgia's been really good to the under. So, but sidewise, I like Bama too. And you mentioned, though, this isn't going to crush them if they have one loss. But, man, it should be a ton of fun. I can't wait to watch it.
I'm shocked Georgia struggled. Kentucky's solid defensively, don't get me wrong, but to only score 13, I still think they're a good offensive line. I still like Trevor Etienne. I love I still like Dominic Lovett, Colby Young at receiver. The tight end spot should not be an issue at all. To Oscar Delp, this guy stepped in for Bowers when he was injured last year, and he played great at the tight end spot. And yet this year he's kind of had a tough time, and they haven't really targeted him as much. And then you got that Ben Urasek from Stanford, who was a great tight end out there with the Cardinal. You should have enough weapons here, Georgia, to be a good offense. It just didn't happen against Kentucky, unfortunately. But that's a hell of a game on Saturday night. Absolutely looking forward to that. All right, Ohio State, Michigan State, our final game for this week's edition of Hitting the Books. Ohio State 25-point road favorites, 49 the total here in this game. He covered, and they covered Michigan State last week, even though they let it slip away with a game-winning touchdown by Boston College late in the fourth quarter. Boston College wins, but Michigan State ends up getting the cover last week at Chestnut Hill in a tough loss to Boston College, 23-19, but they do get the money. They're now 2-0 against the spread as underdogs, and that's not a surprise. If anyone knows anything about Jonathan Smith, he's been a very good underdog head coach. You go back and look at Oregon State all those years. They were often a pretty solid underdog. I'm actually kind of mildly tempted to take Michigan State. Now, I know Ohio State, they're ramping it into high gear, again, but again, they faced nobody. They played Akron. They've played Western Michigan. They've played Marshall. And even the Marshall game, they didn't cover. They were 40-point favorites. They won by 35. They were down 7-0 halfway through the first quarter. Marshall actually got the first points of that game with a nice touchdown drive. Now they're laying 25 on the road, first road game of the year. Now, granted, they're a much better team than Michigan State, but that's a lot of points. First road game. There's a scrappy, feisty Michigan State team, a coach that's very good catching points as an underdog, and Jonathan Smith. I'm interested. Now, Aiden Childs can't throw multiple interceptions like he did against Boston College, or else they're going to get just destroyed in this game. That is suicide when you're playing Will Howard, Jeremiah Smith, the receiver, the Henderson, the running back, and this loaded offense of Ohio State. You can't give this team the ball in good field position with turnovers. You've got to fucking fix that and rein that shit in if you're Aiden Childs. But if you can do that here at home, I think it's a lot of points to be given this Michigan State bunch, especially for an Ohio State team that A, has played nobody, and B, is now playing their first road game of the year. And by the way, they have Iowa at home next week after this game, which is a much bigger game for them. So I'm kind of leaning Michigan State here, but I am worried about the Childs' mistakes and interceptions. He does that. This could get away from Michigan State. C-Mac, what do you think here? Buckeyes, Spartans.
Yeah, Marshall, even Earl, who I was ripping on, he was a great, but he was like 16 of 22. I mean, he still only had 130-something yards, but they scored right away, did Marshall, and they got another. I want to take Michigan State in this one. Last week, I really thought about it, and I stayed off. in the end. But Childs, that's what I was going to talk about. I mean, he can't do that here. This is he just can't do it. And this is a little bit get in there. I think get a win for Ohio State. They have the weapons, and I'd like to see once the competition a little bit more. Howard Urbano, because he was good, but I don't think he's great. So I think he turnover too, or he gets shooken a little. That's why I love these points with Michigan State. I have to take it, and they gotta, Kim, that kicker, he can drill some long field goals. So maybe they get some points that way. And I think at over the 24 here, which you're getting 25, yeah, I'm on it.
All right. It sounds like a CMAC liking the Spartans here a little bit at this number. So we'll see how it plays out in this one with the Ohio.
And again, Smith, such a difference too. I mean, like he's already they were competitive against Maryland. We didn't know what we were going to really get for Michigan State after the last couple of years and the whole program, everything that's gone on. It just shows, man. When great coaches go places, like it really shows.
Just like we're seeing so many different areas, when you just make that good coaching hire, you can kind of exceed it. Look at Kurt Signetti at Indiana. You just make the right hire, and look at the difference it makes when you got a guy that knows what he's doing. And look at how he built Oregon State from the ground up and made them a great program, top of the upper echelon Pac-12 program. Nobody thought it was possible. He did it. He'll get Michigan State back up to being contenders in the Big Ten. I don't know if Michigan State will get enough players away from Ohio State, Michigan, and some of these other schools to win the Big Ten, but they're going to be in the mix in a couple of years if they keep Jonathan Smith there. He will. Yeah. He will make them, an upper echelon Big Ten program again. Now, I want to point out one thing before we wrap this game up in the show. You're going to see that Ohio State has beaten Michigan State 8 straight times, 7-1 against the spread in those games as well. They have been destroyed repeatedly, Michigan State, by Ohio State. Oh, yeah. But those were all Mark D'Antonio, Mel Tucker years as head coach at Michigan State. Now it's Jonathan Smith. To Connor Mack's point, this is a much better coach team now. So be careful with that. Just because, Ohio State's covered 7 straight and they've won 8 straight against Michigan State doesn't mean it's going to happen again this year. There's a new coach now and a hell of a lot better coach, and especially compared to Mel Tucker. It's not even an argument how much better Jonathan Smith is. So keep an eye. It should be interesting, but I think, I'm interested in the big underdog there in that game. Great stuff with CMAC. Better late than never, Connor, to join us with the power outage, but finally we're able to make it. Good to have you. Good to have everyone in the chat, even you, Justin. Good to have you in the chat. Hit the like button. We appreciate it very much. Any final thoughts, CMAC, before we wrap it up?
No, let's have a great week. It kind of sucked everything that went on this morning, but we got through it, and let's just keep winning. Let's roll.
No doubt, it was a profitable week for yours truly, compared in comparison to what some may believe. You had another nice week in college football. So we're looking forward to it, and we hope this show helps you get ready and prepared for the upcoming week in college football. Shout out to everyone in the chat: Daryl Turner, Robert Franklin, everyone else, Jorge, One Bet the Plus, Only Bet the Plus, Chosen One, Al, Rance, Mike, Rob Free, Tom Leach, Ira, everyone in the chat, G Martinez. Appreciate everyone joining us here. Ross Pitt, Ryan Kozlowski.
One thing, hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't.
Yep.
Appreciate it.
Kong's Clips, too, continues to have a great start to the year. Tremendous cap by him.
Congrats.
Everyone in the chat. Nasty Nate. We appreciate everyone joining us here in this show. And unlike Justin's opinions, which are false, there are 207 live viewers right now watching on all platforms. It's not just YouTube.
Justin who?
McElvey.
I don't see him on here. Oh, he's on yours. That's why I can't see it.
Yeah, exactly. No. 205 live viewers, Justin. So you believe the numbers you want to believe. But we got 207 live viewers across Twitter, X, Facebook, and YouTube combined right now. More than the
Yeah,
7.
and we're on separate. We're on 2 right now, live too as well.
Right.
We're on the Hitting the Books and yours, so that's
And you're
what's it as
watching
well.
us, and you've spent the last
And
almost 3 hours watching us. So we thank you, Justin. Appreciate it.
I have to look at it. Is that
Yep.
the real Justin McElvey?
I don't know.
Doesn't sound like him.
No, it's like, cause isn't this guy like one of Jimmy the Bags? Like, that name sounds familiar. One of Jimmy the Bags viewers and Pub Sports Radio people. That's what I thought. I'm like, is someone taking over his account or something, or what? Like, what the hell is going on here? Doesn't sound like Justin. Justin's not typically talking that kind of nonsense.
No.
But we'll see. Anyway, enough of that. Great stuff. Appreciate everyone joining us. Hit the like button on the way out. And we hope you have another great week and enjoy the college football games this upcoming week. For Connor Mack, I'm Ian Cameron. Thanks for tuning in. Appreciate it, whether it's been on YouTube, Twitter, X, or Facebook. We appreciate it. Hit the like button on the way out. Enjoy the games and good luck this weekend in college football as Week 5 approaches. Cash some tickets, and we will be back with you again next Monday, 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific, for another edition of Hitting the Books, College Football Betting Show. Class dismissed.